Live from the 607, it's the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, where we're talking everything movies, TV, comics, and entertainment. Join in the conversation on social media with the hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome to an all-new edition of the ODPH podcast, better known as the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. What is happening, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us this week. My name is Ken M. Joining me in studio, as always, you know him. He's the co-host. His name is Padawan J.
Hello, hello, hello.
It is good to be back in the studio. If you haven't been following our social media accounts, currently we survived a quote-unquote monster snowstorm.
A snowpocalypse.
Snowpocalypse, if you will, which turned out to vastly miss the mark of the amount that they were claiming.
Bit of a nothing burger there.
Right, but there was some high wind advisories, and it was a little dangerous to record the sports show, so we opted not to. Fear not, we will be talking about that on the podcast next week. But you have tuned into the entertainment edition, where we talk movies, TV, comics, and more, and we have a lot to discuss on that area. So definitely we want to keep this conversation going with you after the show, so swing on over to odphpodcast.com. Join the conversation on the social media accounts. They're all right there on the front page. Check out the TeePublic store. Check out the Patreon link. Shout out to our amazing patrons. One tier, $2 a month. And we have an idea for the special episode in March. Possibly. Dun, dun, dun. So if you want to find out, you got to sign up. The Parlay Points blog section, the classified section, which has friends of the show, such as 3FN Podcasts, Dragon Master Games, and so many more. The directory, Pat, how many providers are we on?
315,000.
Sounds about right to me. So if we're not on your favorite podcast player, you got to let us know where you're hearing us from, and we'll make sure we get that squared up. And for the music section, there's so much there at the website. We just simply say for anything and everything that is the ODPH, you can find it at odphpodcast.com. And always remember on social media to use the hashtag ODPHpod. Kicking off this edition of the show, we had to actually do a coin flip because all three segments this week could have been a lead segment. But we landed on the show that definitely has garnered a bit of a buzz. It's right now kind of getting in this full swing of things. And that show is what, Pad?
That would be The Mandalorian.
Yes, the Star Wars spinoff starring Pedro Pascal as the last Mandalorian with his adopted child, Grogu, if you will.
I mean, looks like a child, actual age, 52.
Right. It's Star Wars, but that's how they break things down, so we just follow along. But the pair has definitely won over pop culture in 2 seasons counting, and now obviously in season 3.
Yep.
They're definitely making some strides to keep that hot streak rolling with Chapter 19, The Convert. So if you're new to the ODPH, first and foremost, thank you for checking us out. What we'd like to do is give you a spoiler-free statement. So if you haven't seen the show yet, don't worry, we're not going to ruin anything for you. But we give you fair warning. After our spoiler-free statement, we go into a countdown. At that point, if you haven't seen the show yet and you don't want to have anything ruined, duck out of the episode, pause it where you're listening to, catch up on the episode, and jump back in. Because after that moment, we deep dive into the show. We hold nothing back. We don't want to hear, oh man, you guys ruined this for me. We give you fair warning. So just putting it out there. After the countdown, you know what time it is. So that said, let us talk the latest episode of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Pad, give me your spoiler-free statement on Chapter 19.
Thought it was a good episode. Certain parts of it seem kind of, what are we doing here? Where are things going? But I trust with, Dave Filoni and then Jon Favreau at the helm. It'll pay off in the end. You got to remember we're kind of in the middle of 2 trilogies here. We're in between the original trilogy and before the sequel trilogy. So, we're taking this opportunity to bridge some gaps, answer some questions, So while it might not seem clear what we're doing here, down the road, this season, next season, it might pay off a little bit more. It's not going to be an immediate payoff. But overall, I thought it was a good episode. Not their best, not their worst. It was kind of like a middle of the road for me.
I hate saying the word filler, but considering where we've been since they've returned for season 3, this kind of felt like a filler episode
in certain instances,
in certain ways. Like the vibe of it after we change lead characters, I really thought, okay, this is an interesting direction to go in. I hope we have a big payoff later, because otherwise I can't really see why we're spending so much time on said character. Now, I don't think it was a bad episode. I want to stress this.
Sure.
But going in where I thought we were heading with this series, this threw me for a curveball that I just could not get a full grasp of.
I did too, and it took me a little bit to remember what that person had been doing, what they were tied into, and then once the ball started rolling and I started seeing what they were going with, I was like, okay, I'm remembering, I'm seeing maybe where this goes, but I'll let it play.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it, because we know that with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, they like to really deep dive into the Star Wars mythos. They really like to plant Easter eggs. And where this is going to pay off, I mean, I'm sure we're expecting something big. Maybe with Ahsoka, maybe with some of the other shows. Possibly by the season finale of The Mandalorian. We don't know.
Could be.
But I don't feel this is throwaway now, but I just think the abruptness of bringing said character back really was making me question a lot of things.
I think what it was, and I'm trying to be deliberately vague here, I think it was just kind of like try and remind us, hey, remember this guy? You're going to want to pay attention to this, because I feel like a lot of times in TV, you only ever bring something up, and that can be a person, place, thing, event, whatever, if it's going to matter down the road.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't like anime filler where you're watching this big battle going on between these two warring factions, and it's a knockdown, drag-out fight. And hey, we're going to spend 3 episodes with this other cast of characters who are often someplace else that, hey, they're not have anything to do with the story. We're never going to see them again, but we're just kind of filling some time here until we can get the other stuff done. To me, with this, it's like this is going to pay off at some point. It's just kind of like a gentle, hey, remember this guy? You're going to want to remember. Because I'll be honest, I forgot about this dude.
I completely did too. So seeing him get so much screen time really baffled me. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, it just really surprised me. And I want to say it took me out of the episode for a little while, but I came back in by the time it was done. Still a solid episode, nevertheless. So that said, let us get into that spoiler talk. So Pad, in 3, 2, 1, talk to me about Chapter 19, The Convert.
Thought it was a good episode. You know, not the best, not the worst. Kind of like in the middle of the road. You know, I see where they're going in terms of why they're doing this and kind of the stuff they're bringing in. And, you know, and they keep bringing up the cloning thing. And, you know, you remember, I think it was last season, we saw the really weird, distorted looking body that was clearly one of the failed attempts to clone Palpatine or what ended up turning into Snoke. You know, so we kind of know what this guy was getting into. You know, and it's filling that gap with, okay, how did we get to the Emperor getting thrown down the shaft of the second Death Star to he's alive in Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
And along the way, how did Snoke come about and this and that? So I think this is starting to and to this point, it is not, at least to my recollection.
Yeah, it's never been said.
Never been said how it happened. And like I said, I don't read every comic. I haven't read every book, and I know I've missed a few.
Contrary to popular belief.
Yeah, contrary to popular belief, you know, to my knowledge, it hasn't been explained yet. And a lot of times in Star Wars, when they do that, it's deliberate because they have something coming down the road for it, or they just don't want to let you know, kind of like Yoda's heritage.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is them kind of taking the opportunity to fill in that gap for the fans that want to know, and just to kind of fill in the greater audiences where might not have fit in the movies overall, but now that you have this opportunity to not have to do a flashback and not have to do this long exposition of how it happened, you can take this time and really flesh it out. But for the story in the episode overall, like I said, middle of the road, you know, don't hate it, don't love it. You know, do I recommend watching it? I mean, if you're in the series, yeah, there's some stuff in here that I think is going to pay off down the road and play in down the road. But am I saying, oh my God, you have to get up at 6 a.m. local time to watch this first thing in the morning? No.
I have to agree with you on that. And I'm going to say a comparison, but hear me out before I can sense the rage building in you.
Okay.
This reminded me of Titan Season 2 premiere.
Never saw it, so maybe.
So, well, I know your feelings on the show. So I just want to stress like this. We kicked off with finishing up the Mandalorian's portion of the story.
Sure.
And then we went right into the next phase.
Sure.
Where it just felt like we could have ended Mando's story last episode. Like we didn't need it carrying over.
Yeah.
And I think when you try doing something like this, especially with how quick they tied it up.
Yeah, that wasn't very long.
Yeah, I was just like, why are we carrying it over here? Because you're giving so much time to Dr. Pershing, who we haven't seen since season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Oh, so I can look up on the Star Wars Wikipedia. It's been a hot minute.
I'm going to say since season 1, but it was great seeing Omid Abatai come back in the role and really have a story for him. But I'm kind of questioning, like, why did we do this when this could have been done in like a short or something in that variation?
So the last episode we saw him in was Chapter 16, The Rescue, which was episode 8 of season 2.
Really? I honestly forgot.
Yeah.
Like that is how much he's made an impact after season 1.
Well, even for me, as big a Star Wars fan as I am, having watched season 1 twice to get ready for season 2, I've only seen season 2. Well, I've seen most of the episodes of season 2 twice, except the final episode. I've seen that like 100 times.
Yeah.
But even for me, at first I forgot who he was, but then as I looked at the face, I'm like, oh, right, it's this guy. And then they mentioned cloning. I'm like, oh, right, he's the guy who was really into cloning before he got arrested, and he was figuring out how to clone Palpatine.
Yeah. But like I say, he hasn't really made that much of an impact, at least memorable to me, since season 1. Like season 2, I completely forgot he was in. But it's nothing against the actor by any means.
Right.
It's just...
He was there for such a blink and you miss it portion.
Right. Because the great thing that they do with the show is they give you that recap before if you want, which I like how streaming services do.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, I talk about this in the comics blog a lot for Parlay Points, that when a company does a quick recap in whatever variation for new readers, I think more TV shows need to do this for new viewers coming in.
Well, and I'm looking at the appearances again, and this is why he's almost forgettable for season 2. He's only in 3 episodes of season 2. So season 1, he's in there for 1 episode, or 2 episodes, excuse me.
Right.
The first episode and then the 3rd episode. But for season 2, he's technically in 3 episodes, so chapter 12, The Siege, is the first one he appears in for season 2, but it's a hologram. So not really there. The second episode he technically appears in, but he's mentioned only by name, is chapter 14, The Tragedy. So he only actually physically appears in 1 episode of season 2. That's why he's probably so forgettable for season 2.
Well, that's the whole thing, because he really didn't have that much of an impact for his character, like on the overall story for season 2.
Right.
At least in my opinion. So, but if you're a fan of him, hey, it played off well for this episode. But first, like I say, we tie up the cliffhanger ending from last week's episode, which caught some online disputes.
Sure.
And I want to kind of put this out there right now.
Okay.
The critiques that I was hearing about The Mandalorian last week was about the lighting in the cave.
Yeah.
Now, Pad, what was your feelings on that?
I understood it. I watched the episode fairly early in the morning, 6:30 a.m. Eastern, because I had to work that day, and I wanted to watch it before work because I knew I wouldn't have time once I got out of work to watch it before we recorded. So, and plus it's been real cold here, so I've had my blackout curtains drawn just to keep the cold air out. So it was pretty goddamn dark in the living room I was watching in. So I had a little bit of issues with certain spots, but it wasn't overall like I'm shutting off lights and I'm shutting blinds and I'm shutting curtains and I'm doing this, I'm doing... Like, I didn't have that much of an issue, but there was a little bit.
I understood people's complaints about it to a degree.
Yeah.
But then again, they had to realize where the characters were.
Yeah.
You're underground.
In a place that had been bombed out 20 years ago?
Exactly.
30 years ago?
It's not meant to be an ideal resort, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
And yes, it's going to be dark. It's going to be grimy. It's going to be very hard to see, as it's supposed to be. So it played into the role it was. But I think for a lot of people that said, oh, this is the worst episode because of that, I disagree with that take. Because that's a very minor thing, and it shouldn't take you out because they're going into an underground cave. Mm-hmm. Like, I just think for a lot of the critique I was hearing, people were saying, oh, this is the worst episode because of this. And I strongly disagree with it. Like, you're entitled to your opinion. I just disagree with it based on that fact. But we do resume where Din Djarin has been saved by Bo-Katan, played by Katie Sackhoff, who does phenomenal in the role of Bo-Katan. And she has saved him from drowning underwater in the living water.
Mm-hmm.
And when she pulls him up, they're kind of having a recap of what has happened.
Well, I think they're also just trying to process what the fuck just happened.
Yeah, that now the Mandalorian has been absolved of his discretions against
Yep.
the Mandalorian code, and he does take a sample of the living waters with him.
Yep.
And Bo-Katan is really having this back and forth conversation with him, but she doesn't come out and say what she saw underwater.
Yeah.
And we made a point about this last week on the episode, but Pad, what was underwater?
So that was a mythosaur, which was a mythical beast, or what they thought was a mythical beast, that the original Mandalorian, who conquered the planet, conquered one of these giant beasts and supposedly rode them, and were thought to be extinct.
Yes.
And it was brought up in last episode that Bo-Katan told him this whole thing, and it's clearly a very, like, even their little logo that people have seen for, like, God knows how many years at this point. That's a skull of a mythosaur.
Yeah.
That it's like this religious, almost highly important character or creature to their whole race.
Yes. So it's quite a big deal, and the fact that Bo-Katan doesn't like come out and say it.
Yeah, that she's got to be withholding that for a reason.
There's a reason. Yeah, exactly what I was thinking too. There's got to be a reason for it.
Yeah.
Because she is just saying, you didn't see anything underwater?
Because
sure?
if that's me coming out of the water, I'm like, yo, did you see the fucking giant dinosaur that was down there?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck was that? But she knew. She saw it, and he was probably unconscious because he fell farther than he thought, because he, Din even brings up, he's like, that went deeper than I thought. And Bo-Katan brings up, well, yeah, it probably got split open from the bombing during the siege.
Yeah.
And so he probably got knocked out on the way down or whatever.
Oh, easily.
You know, so she's bringing it back up, sees it, and growing up on the planet, being a member of the royal family, you know, and learning enough about the culture and the history, she absolutely knew what that was and was like, I can't tell him this because of why?
Reasons. So they wind up making an escape out of the cave, and they're planning on going back to Bo-Katan's planet of Kalbala. Mm-hmm. And on the way there, who happens to make an appearance, Pad?
That would be a group of Imperial TIE fighters. Well, TIE interceptors is what they were.
Yeah, so the Empire is trailing them now.
And supposedly it's from an Imperial warlord because, well, they're kind of a loose conglomerate. They're not really organized.
Yeah, right now the Empire is just
they're there.
Fragments.
They're there. They're just kind of not organized, which comes back, spoiler alert, comes back to bite them in the ass later.
Oh, yes. But like I said, they're all fragments of what used to be the Empire, so everybody has their own agenda.
Yep.
And you see this group going after Bo-Katan and Din Djarin and Grogu.
Which I can't help but wonder why they were there in the first place. I mean, this is a planet that was bombed. I tried looking up a date. There's been no firm data when the bombing took place on Mandalore. So this is an Imperial warlord, although probably not an Imperial warlord, there for a very specific reason, because the planet's supposedly poisoned and supposedly cursed, and you're not able to So why the fuck are they there? Did they maybe trip off a sensor or something?
That's what I thought.
Some sort of alert? We don't know. I'm sure we'll find out.
Well, you have to think with the Empire doing what they did, they're keeping an eye, at least whoever was involved with it.
Sure.
Is keeping an eye on the solar systems around and seeing who's coming and going from the planet.
Sure.
And I guarantee you that they had something set up for going in those caves.
Could be.
And once Bo-Katan tripped it off, they were definitely in hot pursuit.
Oh, yeah.
Great action sequence with the flying.
Loved it.
This really was Star Wars to me.
Yes.
So you definitely see that they're flying. Mando has to make this dramatic airdrop.
Oh, my God.
When they get back to Bo-Katan's castle to get into his ship.
Yep.
And it's a very cool Mission Impossible-esque moment.
Mm-hmm.
And pulls it off, so now he's flying in his own plane, Bo's in her plane, and they're just dodging and weaving between all the TIE fighters.
I'm just waiting. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure it exists. I just haven't had time to look.
Danger Zone?
No, well, okay, yes, partially that. But no, I'm just waiting for the guitar riff in Freebird.
Ooh.
For when he drops out of her starship.
That would be cool, too.
I know it exists. I haven't had time to find it, but I'm going to find it.
I was waiting for Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins to start kicking it. Because, somebody's going to be making that on TikTok, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
But they wind up escaping for the moment.
For the moment. Well, they take out, I think there was like 5 or 6.
There's 6 to start.
There was 6 to start. They take them all out, and then she sees, Bo-Katan sees smoke rising over one of the hills and puts 2 and 2 together what happened.
Yeah.
And that was TIE bombers had flown in and destroyed her castle, her home. And that pissed her the hell off. So she takes off after them. I think she destroyed one of the bombers, and she's still going after it. Apparently her radar doesn't go out as far as Mandalorian's does, because he sees on his scope, he goes, oh, I see more approaching on the scope, and he just sees the sheer number of them and goes, we're outgunned here. We need to leave. And it gets to the point where a bunch of them start passing her, Bo-Katan, and that's when she realized, oh shit, we're outnumbered here. We need to leave. And and as they're leaving, I can't remember if it was the Mandalorian or if it was Bo, but one of them says, this seems like a lot for a warlord.
Yeah, I think it was Bo-Katan.
She goes, this seems like a lot for a warlord. So implying that, it could be a Moff, it could be someone higher.
Yeah, so somebody definitely has a vested interest in what they're up to. Mandalorians, though, has an escape route in play and sends Bo-Katan the coordinates. Everybody hyperspeeds out of there.
Yep.
And they wind up going back to Mandalorian's secret hideout, if you will.
Yeah.
Which definitely plays a big role here for their story moving forward, because the Mandalorian returns to the secret enclave where all the other Mandalorians who have been underground are hiding.
Yep.
And the armorer is the head person there, and Mando comes and presents the armorer with the living waters sample that he has.
Well, yeah, because he shows up there and they're like, oh, I forget what the word is, but like, you're basically banned from coming here. And he's like, well, I bathed in the living waters. That's impossible. They were buried under the rubble from the purge all those years ago. No, that was a lie. They're there. She witnessed, and who is this? And there's this great long pause because Bo is debating whether she should tell them or not, because she knows when she says her last name what it's going to do, because she could have come up with some random name or whatever, but she's like, you know what? They recognize my armor. They know who I am. I can't hide this.
Exactly.
I can't hide this. So she goes, I'm Bo-Katan of House Kryze. And they go, oh, that's fine. But he goes, oh, I've got proof. So they bring the proof and Bo back to the armor. And I love this little effect where, like, because I was like, it's water. How the fuck are they going to prove this? The armor pours the living water into this giant metal basin of water, and it lights up like the Northern Lights.
Yes, it was a cool effect.
It was super cool. She's like, no, he's telling the truth. And so all of a sudden, he's back in the fold. Oh, hey, you're absolved of your crimes. And then Bo brought up, like, oh, I know he bathed him because I went in to save him. And it's interesting that this is where the title of the convert gets brought in, at least once, where the armor brings up, well, did you, when you after you jumped in the water, have you taken your helmet off since then? And she says, no. She goes, well, then for as long as you keep your helmet on, you can stay with us for as long as you want.
Yeah. So it's an interesting play concerning Bo's story moving forward. I really liked how they snuck that in.
Yeah.
I thought that was very, very clever by the writing team, because now Bo's in a very, very odd situation, because she definitely has conflicting views from the armorer about the Mandalorian's way. So how this is going to play out, definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. But right there, that's had to be about, the first 10 minutes of the episode, give take?
10, 20, yeah.
It was early, because for how long the episode went, it now shifted to the second half of the story. And like I say, this felt to me like this could have been a short. They could have done this online. They could have done this as like like how Marvel Studios does with Werewolf by Night.
Yes.
And some of like the one-shots they've done. You could have done a one-shot with this episode, and I thought it would have been played out a little better. But I think the fact that we went here, it has to have bigger ramifications moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it doesn't, I don't want to say it was a waste of time, but it just felt like forced in there to kill time. Like, that's my vibe with it, because we go back to a familiar place, Pad.
Yeah.
Coruscant. And why is that so important?
Because that is the galactic center of the universe. That is where, for a lot of years, various governments that have run the galaxy have all originated from.
Yes. So we open up on Coruscant, and there is a speech going on.
Yeah, it's like a TED Talk.
Yes, by one Dr. Penn Pershing.
Uh-huh.
It was, once again, like I said, reprising the role of that is Omid Abatai. And Dr. Pershing is thriving now
Yeah.
in the New Republic.
Yeah, he's in this program called the Amnesty Program, which don't know what it is. It's a brand new organization. There's not even a page for it on the Star Wars Wikipedia page, so I can't tell you what the history of this thing is because, hey, it's new to me. My guess, though, is based on the name Amnesty Program. It's a program kind of what the United States and other governments did after World War II with German scientists and some other scientists, where they brought them in and they used them for their work and this, that, and the other. My guess is that's kind of what it's like. We're like, hey, we know the Empire, for all their fucking horrible things they did, had some really smart people on the payroll. Why don't we bring them in, under our terms and under our jurisdiction and our watch and have them do some work?
Yeah. It's a weird thing they try doing here because we do see that Dr. Pershing is not the only person involved in this program.
No.
And he does run into, well, actually, we should give a little background for Dr. Pershing.
Yeah.
The last time we saw him was in season 1, Pad.
So, season 2, technically.
Well, but season 1 was the big deal.
Yeah.
And who was he working with at the time?
He was working with the gentleman, I forget the guy's name, but he was the one who wanted to capture Grogu.
Yes.
So that they could attempt to clone him.
Yes. So Dr. Pershing has always had something to do with clones.
And the Force.
Yes. So he has definitely been a person of interest in that area, but we haven't really seen him since that moment because the initial time when Grogu was getting kidnapped, it was one and done for him. And like I say, he was in a blink and forget about a moment in season 2.
Right. Well, the only thing we saw with him for season 2 was we saw him continuing to do his work someplace else. And like I said, there was that one scene where, I think they even lingered on it for a second, where there was the body in the Bacta tank, and it looked really fucked up. Mm-hmm. And you're able to put two and two together. That looks like it was supposed to have been, because remember, he was a part of the group that was trying to capture Grogu and attempt to clone a Force-sensitive user, which has never been done before.
Right.
And we know who ended up getting cloned later in the franchise, a certain former Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
So what it looked like in the body we saw was one of the failed attempts to clone Palpatine, or what would have been Snoke.
Yeah, so this might lead into that. We don't know. I hope it does, though.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
Because as we see, Pershing is now meeting with a few other people involved with the Amnesty Program. Mm-hmm. And he sees somebody that he does not exactly know how to react to. And that's Elia Kane.
Elia Kane, yeah.
So Katie O'Brien is playing Elia Kane. Mm-hmm. And definitely has a vested interest in Dr. Pershing.
Oh, yeah, because she used to work for Moff Gideon.
Yes. So there's a little bit of weird uneasiness. It's almost like the first day of school and you see somebody that you haven't seen all summer. It's kind of that vibe. But you see that Kane is really trying to befriend Dr. Pershing.
Yeah.
And going out of the way, in fact, is even to the point finding out about what his favorite food was when he was with the Empire. And, and sneaking in the ration crackers that they used to do. Almost like the ones you get at restaurants with the soup.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's the pre-wrapped crackers.
Yeah, and you can tell that it's not a great living for these folks because they all live in the same size quarters, all wearing the same type of clothes and same color clothes. They're not given names. They're given, amnesty officer and then a letter and a number.
Yeah.
But then also probably once a week, once a day, it's not clear. There's a droid who comes and visits them and asks them the same series of questions. Are you happy? How are you mentally? Is there anyone you're mad at? Are you mad at the New Republic? So they clearly don't trust them.
Well, obviously, dealing with anybody from the Empire, you just can't. And the fact that the Republic is trying to do this amnesty program is very questionable.
Yeah.
There's a lot that can go wrong.
Yeah.
But as we've seen over the times in Star Wars, the Republic makes a lot of bad decisions.
Yeah, they do.
Jar Jar Binks as a senator.
Well, that was the old Republic.
Still, that's caused the whole deal going on with Order 66 and everything. So.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I'm just putting it out there. So, and you wonder why I don't like the character. I digress. As we go further in this story, though, Kane is really trying to pressure Pershing into his research.
Yeah.
And why he gave it up.
Well, because he's starting to feel like unfulfilled in what he's doing, and he even brings up, I think it's the second time the droid asks him the series of questions, and he's like, "Well, can I do some?" He kind of asks a simple question: "Oh, can I do some of my own work on my own time?"
Well, that's because Kane is kind of planting that bug in him.
Oh, yeah.
She's really trying to push, like, you should really try, how much good you could do with the Republic. And he's very much steering away from it. So when he does have that meeting with the droid, he does slide that in because he's very happy getting the pardon.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to cross that and have a very worse fate.
He knows there's a very unhappy sentence at the other end of the pardon.
Yes.
If it gets taken away.
Uh-huh. And the droid immediately
goes into its like political, legal, well, no, you can't because under Coruscant, whatever, blah, 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 section this, part that, no, you can't.
Yeah. So he accepts that. He is one that's really not pushing it forward. But Kane is not giving up on this.
No.
And is really pushing the point, like, you don't realize what your research could do. It could revolutionize the Republic and the universe moving forward.
Think of all the good the Kaminoans did. You could expand on that.
Yeah, so it's a really crazy deal.
Yeah.
And like I said, Katie O'Brien, who's playing the role here of Kane, is so much invested in it. Like, she is really coming across and saying, like, we can do this. I'll show you how. And talks Pershing into making a run to go get some equipment in this high-speed train jumping plan. Like, I mean, how would you describe it, Pat?
It's kind of this like heist type scenario. Yeah.
I mean, that's the easiest way to kind of think of you, because I was blanking on the words, because you see them sneaking around after hours.
Yeah.
And it's almost one thing with the embassy program. I wonder if they have a curfew that
they
did not divulge, but it would make a lot more sense, because you see Kane and Pershing taking off on a train. They sneak on there, and they're trying to get to a warehouse type place.
Yeah.
One of the former ships, if you will.
Yeah, one of the Star Destroyers that's been decommissioned, and it got mentioned by one of the other amnesty workers that it was being cataloged for the stuff on it.
Yeah, so like I say, they've almost made those ships into warehouses.
Yeah.
So you see Kane and Pershing are making a run there to go get items for his research.
They open one of the doors, it starts making loud noises, and he's like... He's nervous as all hell.
Oh yeah,
where he's looking around, he's jumpy, he's this, he's that, and the door makes a lot of noise. And he starts freaking out. She's like, "Yeah, don't worry, listen, it's decommissioned. Why would anybody care about what's here?"
Well, once this happens, this is where the episode really kind of turns, and this is where it really caught my attention.
Yeah,
because things went too easy.
Yeah,
like, they're on the train and they escape.
Yep.
With the droid robot coming after them, which I thought was.
Yeah.
A little too simple.
Sure.
And I understand why, TV constraints and what such.
Sure.
So when they jump off and they're running through the town and they finally get to the Star Destroyer, they're now on there. They're not tripping up any kind of alarms by any means.
Well, and especially this ship has clearly been sitting there for a while. This isn't something fresh out of outer space, just sitting there brand spanking new. This thing has clearly been sitting there a while, and they're going through kind of the guts of this Star Destroyer, and then there's a loud noise that occurs, and he freaks out, goes, "Oh my gosh, what was that?" And she goes, "Oh, don't worry, it's just the ship settling." And my first reaction was, she goes, "Oh, it's just a ship settling." And I go, "Settling from what?"
Yeah.
It's been sitting there for a while.
Yeah. So you can kind of tell at this moment things are not right.
She's just rolling that string out and leading him along.
Yep. And he's just pulling on that string and just following blindly. Because he does grab some equipment, puts it in a briefcase type object.
Yep.
They make a run, and once they get outside, who's waiting for them?
That would be the Coruscant security.
Yep. So you see a ship flying overhead with a big spotlight on them.
Yep.
You see law enforcement come over and arrest them, and sure enough...
And they don't arrest her.
They don't arrest her. She turns and stands right by their side.
Because she sold his ass out.
Yep. So Pershing is now... caused violation as parole.
You cannot trust her for anything.
No, absolutely not.
I wouldn't trust her if she passed me a pitcher of salt.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. You couldn't trust her for anything, even if she was giving out those delicious crackers. Like,
you're not wrong.
No, and that's the whole thing. Like, he wound up buying into the idea of his research, because at the end of the day, Pershing is a flawed character.
Yes.
And it makes perfect sense. Like, this is his life's work.
And scientists, especially in television and movies, will forego all chances of their safety and security if it means furthering their research.
Exactly. It almost had a weird Better Call Saul vibe to it.
Kind of.
Almost, like, just for the sheer fact of
Yeah.
you have a character that had to give up what they love doing.
Yep.
And they have a new life, and they're trying to move on from it, but they can't escape from their past. This is what happens with Dr. Pershing. But now he's caught violating his parole and has to deal with the Republic's law enforcement.
Yep.
And they decide that they are going to mind wipe him.
Yeah.
Now, Pad, you need to explain this to me a little bit.
I'll try.
To what degree were they mind wiping him?
So the way the Mon Calamari person was explaining this, because Pershing starts freaking the fuck out because he's seen this thing before. I think he called it like a solar flare or something.
Mind flare.
Mind flare. The Empire, it sounds like, used this device to completely wipe a person's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the Mon Calamari was describing it was like, he's like, well, yeah, it does that, but only at high doses. If we keep this to a low voltage, a low dose, it'll only wipe out certain aspects, and it'll only wipe out some of the bad stuff. And it's not he and I think he was lying here, because he goes, oh, it's actually quite a refreshing experience. I've had it done several times myself.
Yeah. I thought that was very key saying.
I was like, yeah, you're bullshitting your way through this, my guy.
Him saying that was a line of crap right there.
So my guess is the way it's supposed to work at a low dose is kind of like you think of like the neuralizer from Men in Black.
Yeah.
Where there's different settings to it. Mm-hmm. My guess is it's a low setting so that it'll only wipe out the last couple days, the last couple weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
Kind of like a soft reset. My guess is, and as soon as she said this, Elia said this, like, oh, he's a friend, and despite his flaws, I want to stay behind and watch him. As soon as she said that, I'm like, yeah, because they brought up, oh, yeah, high voltage. I'm like, yeah, that thing's going to get fucking cranked here at some point.
Yep.
And as soon as she said, oh, I want to stay behind and stay with him, I'm like, yeah, she's going to crank this fucker.
Oh, yeah.
She cranks it to 11. So my guess is once it gets to the high voltage, it's a hard reset.
Yeah.
That his mind is going to be utterly and totally wiped. That he might be a vegetable.
That's what I thought was thinking, too. Because he's sitting there and he's screaming about, that Elliot set him up and just...
Yeah.
And they're not hearing it. Like,
right.
Even the line, it's a trap, got said.
Yeah.
Which I had to admit, I marked out for a little bit.
Because even the little lightning bolts or whatever going into it are like this blue and purple and white, kind of like these nice colors. Mm-hmm. She cranks it to 11, they go full red.
Yeah. It was very telling about how Kane was committed to getting Dr. Pershing.
Yeah.
Like, to get him punished and essentially killing him.
Essentially, yeah.
Because I don't see how he survives this in any other way than he's brain dead.
He's got to be brain dead because
she turns that literally up to 11. Like, no lie about this.
It's tying off a loose end. What that loose end is, I don't really know, because all he did was cloning. So, whatever it is, she's tying up a loose end, and this dude's got to be brain dead.
Well, that's the only thing I could think is maybe it's something with Moff Gideon.
Yeah,
that there was something involving him that we don't know about exactly.
He only got, we haven't seen him yet. He only got a brief mention in episode 2 that he got arrested and he was put on trial someplace else. That Carl Weathers mentioned him briefly.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that I don't exactly know how they're playing it out. That's
right,
because that's the biggest bubble that we have. Devoting an entire episode to this guy and not have that big payoff, I thought was very, very odd.
Right.
And it wasn't anything against the acting. Like I say, I wasn't mad about it. I wasn't, angry in any way, shape, or form. So I'm just sitting there going, what are we doing here?
Right.
That we've now devoted so much time to him, unless you're setting up Elliot Kane to be a threat later and try taking down the Republic from the inside, or just maybe she did that to cover her own tracks. I don't know. Right.
They're being deliberately vague on what happened to Gideon, too, because I looked up his Star Wars Wikipedia page, and a brief little bit for the season says, quote, after the assault on his cruiser, Moff Gideon was placed under the arrest of the New Republic. Paz Vizsla and the Armorer believed that only death would have been justice for his atrocities. According to Din Djarin, It was very likely that he would be executed for his crimes by the New Republic Tribunal, although the Armorer doubted that.
Yeah.
So, all we know is he got arrested and put on trial. We don't know what happened to him.
No, we don't. So there's a lot of gray area with this character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say this was a bad episode.
No.
But it was just kind of puzzling that you'd focus so much time on him just to kill him off. It's not like he was a character like Werner Herzog's client.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't like him
Yes.
that, a lot of fans had invested interest in. Or even Moff Gideon or somebody on that level.
Right.
Pershing is a solid character, but it's
right.
A non-important one.
It's a character for a story that we don't even really haven't foreseen or seen what the end result is. We know what it's going to be. It's Snoke and then Palpatine coming back.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen that. So you're killing off a guy that's kind of loosely tied to that. And you're bringing that storyline back in, where it plays out, I don't know. We'll see. But it was interesting that they decided to bring it in. And like I've said before, nothing in Star Wars is ever brought in for just a random filler.
Right.
It seems like it. That, like I said, there was an episode of Rebels where they stole Hammerhead cruiser ships, which are the ones with like the look like the top part of a hammer.
Yeah.
They captured those. It seemed like at the time filler episode, but then you go to watch Rogue One, and hey, the rebellion's using those same cruisers in the Battle of Scarif. It's like, oh hey, tie-in. That's how they got that. Do you need to know it? No, but it's fun if you saw the episode. But they're bringing this in and bringing up this storyline for a very deliberate reason. What it is, don't know yet.
No, we just have to sit back and wait and see because obviously we don't have a preview for next week's episode.
Right.
We go into these pretty cold.
Right.
And that's nothing wrong with it. It's not a shot by any means.
Yeah. I prefer it that way.
Exactly. Same here. But I just thought it was odd placing unless we have a big payoff with it.
Right.
And if they want to bring it back for Ahsoka, I'm okay with it.
Sure.
This is kind of the quote-unquote long-term booking.
Well, I think given what Ahsoka is going to be about, and that's finding Grand Admiral Thrawn and finding Ezra, because, hey, spoiler, at the end of Star Wars Rebels, those two characters go missing, and they go off to go find them. My guess is that was what they brought up, this is more than a Imperial Warlord.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is it's Thrawn.
Yeah.
So that could be an early tease for Thrawn.
That'd be an amazing tease for Thrawn.
Next week's episode, though, going to be huge because, like you said, we don't know anything about it other than it's titled Chapter 20. Mm-hmm. Directed by some dude named Carl Weathers.
Ooh.
And then written by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni.
So, Lock, it's going to be a great episode.
Oh, goddamn right it is. Filoni's writing.
Leap, Ahsoka.
Could be.
Ahsoka, or we'll see.
Ahsoka's his baby. Ahsoka's, his creation.
Yeah. He is very, very protective of that character, and I definitely see her showing up at some point.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it wasn't going to be this episode, it's going to be episode 7.
Yeah.
So we'll have to kind of see how this all plays out. But overall, Pat, final thoughts on the episode?
Thought it was a fun episode. I like the action. I like the interesting story and kind of like the mystery and plot behind it. Interested to see where it goes. Not quite sure. Also want to give a shout out. If the building at the beginning of Dr. Pershing's thing looked really familiar, because it did to me.
Yeah.
It's because it's the opera house that we saw from Revenge of the Sith, where we heard about.
Oh.
I'm like, this building and the carpet looks really fucking familiar. And I looked it up. Yeah, it's the Galaxy's Opera House where Palpatine told Anakin about a certain tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Interesting.
Same building. Just a little fun tie back. Like I said, tie back to the prequels, which I love.
Yeah, I like how they tie things back to the prequels. But the show is definitely still a solid watch. This episode, not my favorite, but it's not saying anything bad about it. I just didn't like how the pacing was, that we had 10 minutes of Mando and Bo-Katan.
Yeah.
And then gone, and then we focus on what feels like a throwaway episode unless we have some payoff. If this comes back down the road, I will say this is a great setup for Thrawn if that's the direction they go in, which would be perfect if they did. But to spend so much time on a throwaway character,
right?
I mean, let's face it, Pershing, doesn't really move the needle. If you say, hey, we're featuring Dr. Pershing.
Yeah, that's like I'm not watching it first thing in the morning. I'll watch it at some point.
Yeah, so to focus so much time, there's got to be a big payoff. If they start setting up for Thrawn's appearance in this,
Right.
I'm all for it, and I will say this was a great way to lead in. But for right now, it was solid for what it was, but I'm with you. This is not one that I scream is a must-watch, but one I think you definitely will enjoy if you like the series thus far.
Yeah.
But that's our takes on Chapter 19, a.k.a. Episode 3 of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. But why don't you hit us up on that hashtag and let us know what you thought. Hashtag ODPH Pod. Tell us about your thoughts about The Mandalorian on Disney+. Season 3, Episode 3, otherwise known as Chapter 19, The Convert. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, and welcome to The Capsule Life, a show for the most casual and dedicated fans of comics and a member of the Comic Watch family. I'm your host, Sean. Join me and discover what the world of comics and graphic novels have to offer. From one-on-one interviews with industry professionals, roundtable discussions with passionate fans, and reviews on the latest comics, TV shows, and movies. You can also check out our website, www.thecaptionlife.com, to find out where you can listen to us, a list of all of our episodes, and where you can find us on social media under the username @CaptionLife. You'll get a new episode from us every week, so hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.
Coming back for another segment on this edition of the ODPH podcast, and it is time to say goodbye for now. To arguably TV's #1 show.
The ratings would agree with you.
Yeah, so let us talk about the Season 1 finale of a television phenom that has really shown video game shows can come over to the pop culture audience and be successful if you really follow the source material and you really make it about the characters. Pat, what show am I talking about?
That would be Season 1 of The Last of Us.
Yes, the HBO Max hit series based off the video game starring Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie, finding their way through a post-apocalyptic world that is getting infected daily by a fungus that is devastating all of humanity. On paper, it doesn't sound like it will work, but this show has definitely surpassed all expectations. It has now crossed over into that pop culture must-watch show of the week, and we have now reached the season finale, but there's a lot to talk about with that.
Yeah, so we got to talk some numbers because despite the Oscars being on at the same time this was going on, starting even before this episode dropped, which the Oscars drew 18.8 million viewers, just for some context. The final episode of The Last of Us still managed to score 8.2 million viewers. And reading from an article on Variety.com says, quote, The Last of Us closed its final season with yet another triumph. With an audience of 8.2 million people for episode 9, the series broke its own viewership record, a significant feat considering that the finale was released during ABC's telecast of the Oscars. A combination of Nielsen numbers and first-party data from Warner Bros. Discovery, this number accounts for those who tuned into the Sunday night airings on HBO's cable channel, as well as streams on HBO Max through the night. WBD also shared that the first 6 episodes of the series are now averaging 30.4 million viewers.
Crap.
Including ongoing viewership past initial airings, with episode 1 alone approaching 40 million total viewers in the weeks since it debuted. In Europe and Latin America, The Last of Us has become the most watched show in HBO Max's history. Close quote.
And rightfully so. I think every accolade the show has gotten has been rightfully deserved. This show has really dived into the characters.
Yes.
And the one win that it's had is it hasn't focused so much on the virus that's infecting and turning people into the monsters known as clickers and bloaters.
It almost takes a back seat at times.
It does. And I think that that's why this show is connecting so much with the pop culture audience. I think the fact that you have such strong acting from the 2 leads on this show and everybody that's came on to play side roles to them.
Yeah.
Nobody's dropped the ball.
No.
And it's not to say, in other shows that somebody has, but when you have such a high standard that is established by your leads, you're really challenging the rest of your cast to bring it. And each time on this show, everybody stepped up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody completely has.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have this show going into a finale that people understand if you play the video games. But if you don't, you come into this very cold and you're going, okay, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
And we always compare this in a sense to The Walking Dead because, in my opinion, and Pat, please correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen a show in this type of genre and style connect with such an audience since the first season of The Walking Dead.
No, you're right. I mean, there have been other shows in the same genre, the zombie survivor, post-apocalyptic, style. Z Nation, Black Summer come to mind, but none of them have hit the kind of success that The Walking Dead did for that first season, where it was all anyone was talking about, and for a good number of seasons was going up against and even beating the number one ratings juggernaut on Sunday that was Sunday Night Football.
Yep.
Obviously the matchup would kind of
dictate a lot.
Dictate that, but even still, there were some damn good matchups that I remember looking at the rating numbers and going, there's no way the numbers should have been this close.
Yeah.
But they were. This is the only thing, like you said, in that genre that's come close.
Yeah, and it's definitely proven time in and time out that it can definitely hang with the best of the TV shows you've seen.
I mean, Christ, you went up with the Oscars and still pulled off series high ratings.
But the Oscars are not exactly like the Oscars of old.
No, they're not. But even still, for the Oscars to pull the numbers they did, and I read it was like 13 or 18% up from last year.
Yeah, no, they definitely were up, and rightfully so.
The numbers were up. Even still, like, award season for a lot of networks is typically we're not going to air anything. Like, I know there was one channel that was airing Avengers Endgame. Like, a lot of channels will just air a movie they have the broadcast rights to and call it a day.
Yeah.
They'll air reruns. Nothing new will air just because the awards show is on, and they're like, yeah, most households are going to be devoted to that. So the fact that HBO wasn't afraid to put this up against it, and it still drew series high ratings, is astounding.
No, it's absolutely astounding. So that said, let us talk about the season 1 finale. As we know, season 2 is in the works. It's going to be a while till we see the show again, so Let's see how it fared on the way out. Let us talk about a spoiler-free statement for Look for the Light, rather. So, Pad, talk to me.
Thought it was a good episode. Lacked a little bit of the punch I was expecting. I was expecting kind of more of a punch, but I thought it was still a good episode overall.
I thought this episode really demonstrated about how flawed one character was.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it really put into perspective that not everything here is so night and day. That there is a question of what would you do? And I think for a lot of people, this caused a good debate.
Right.
That you have to consider the one character's actions and how this plays moving forward. But I thought for what it was meaning to do and what it meant to do, I thought it hit the mark.
Yeah.
Because going into next season, you wanted to leave on a very big exclamation point mic drop moment. And I felt the show did.
Yeah.
And it definitely had people talking online after.
Oh, yeah.
We've interacted with many people about this, hashtag ODPH pod. And we have had some great conversations about the thoughts of this. And now going into next season, I think there's a little more hesitation of what's coming.
Sure.
Because if you play the video games and you're starting to hear more about the video games, you do know about certain things that could possibly happen.
Oh, yeah.
It's not to say that it will. It all depends on what the writing team wants to do about it, but
they've just been very faithful to the adaptation in the past.
Yeah. And Neil Druckmann, who is the game's writer, has been hand in hand with the writers.
Yeah.
So he has definitely made sure that everything has made sense to the game and what has made it such a big hit. But I thought for the acting in this, I mean, Ramsey and Pascal kill it again.
Oh, God, yeah.
They do such a phenomenal job, and they really change the dynamic before closing out on season 1. So that said, let's get into spoiler talk. You know the deal by now. 3, 2, 1, Pad. Look for the light. What you think?
Thought it was a really good episode. I like the action. I like the acting, and the story was great. And the little personal moments between Joel and Ellie were awesome. But just that ending, like, it was a punch, like an holy, wow, like, oh my gosh. But it just felt like I was expecting a little bit more of a punch, Wasn't necessarily expecting an, oh my God, are they alive? Are they dead? Cliffhanger ending, but just, didn't feel like quite the punch I was expecting, but it was still good.
I thought it was interesting seeing what Joel did.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting watching this for the first time and going, oh man, I would not have done that.
Yeah, he's a bit of a hypocrite.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, did you just become the villain? But at the same time, I'm thinking, yeah, I can see where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great debate.
It's one that's been going on since the game first came out.
Yeah. And for what he does, it's a real question of, would you do this in your case?
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody has a different reaction. And you know what? There's no right or wrong answer.
Right. It's one of those interesting things where, like, I think the Walking Dead Telltale game is very interesting. Where it comes into, like, you have these horrible moral choices to make. And whichever way you go, I like how at the end they give you that percentage.
Yeah.
Of, like, 50% or like 37% chose this way. The other percentage chose the other way. It'd be interesting to see if you could take this choice kind of like that in the game of, like, do you go this way, do you go that way, and then see the percentage of, like, how people would do it.
Well, I think it's great for an online poll.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll run one next Sunday.
Sure.
If I remember to do this, and obviously we'll get up about this on the socials. We might have to do this because there will be no Last of Us this week.
This is true.
Coming up. So it's a great question. If you were Joel, what would you have done? But we'll get to that as we're going through the episode. Because where this kicks off for Look for the Light, I keep on wanting to say look at the light because look at the flowers from The Walking Dead. So I apologize if I keep doing the Freudian slip there. We go back to where Ellie's mother is giving birth.
Yeah, played by Ashley Johnson, who, fun fact, was the waitress in the Avengers.
Yes.
But also played Ellie in the video game.
Yeah, so that was a very cool Easter egg they put in there. A very cool moment for her, obviously. And I like how they've incorporated every voice actor from the show, or from the video game, into the show.
Even some characters we haven't met yet.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I agree with you, too. So at this moment, we do see how Anna, Ellie's mother, is infected by one of the clickers.
Well, she's on her own, and she's running through this forest at the start, and she's very heavily pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these clickers chasing after her, and it looks like this Midwestern, Kansas, Oklahoma, somewhere in that neck of the woods. And she gets into this big old house in the middle of the field, and she bars the door, and then she's like deep breathing because, hey, she's like 8-9 months pregnant. The baby's going to come at any moment. And she hears the clickers coming closer, and then she goes up into the upstairs bedroom, and she bars that door, and you hear them start breaking through the first door, and she starts getting ready to give birth because she reaches down, and her water broke.
Yeah. It's a wild scenario to see happen.
Yeah.
So as she's fighting off the clicker, she now is going into labor.
Uh-huh.
And during this time, she's found by a familiar face that we have seen previously on the show, and that is Marlene.
Yeah.
So being the head of the Fireflies, Marlene has always played a big role in this show. And Merle Dandridge, who plays her, definitely raised this episode up completely, too.
Gotta admit, I forgot about her, and I thought it was Tess for like a solid 10 minutes.
No, like, the minute I saw her, I'm like, oh, this ties everything back together.
I thought it was Tess for the longest time, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then I'm like, oh, wait, it's Marlene.
Yeah, because we haven't seen Marlene
since episode 1.
Yeah, so I love how they brought it back and explained why Ellie is so important. And we do get one of the biggest answers that we've been all kind of waiting to find out, and that is, why is Ellie immune to the fungus?
Yeah, so while her mom, Anna, is fighting off the zombie, the clicker, she eventually kills it, and then she turns to find out, hey, while you're we're fighting with this thing, you gave birth, the baby's here, and she looks down and realizes her leg is bit. And not knowing how the infection's going to go or whether it's going to take effect or not, she immediately cuts the umbilical cord so that it won't pass from the mother to Ellie. So the theory it's been a fan theory for a while is that even I fully don't understand how it works, and I've read it several times, is something to do with because her mom was bit, some of the information or like her body tricks the infection into thinking she's the infection or something like that.
It's when the cells are forming, to kind of put a unofficial doctor spin on this. It's essentially when cells are forming and getting its information, it's tricked into thinking that it's still in the one body.
Right.
It's not in the second one.
Okay.
So that is the very, very plain version of that.
It's like, because they showed it, but they didn't explain it, and I still don't understand how the fuck it works.
Yeah. It's a weird thing about it, but it's more or less saying that, yeah, the cells are there, but they're tricked into not thinking that it's infected her. But it's still like a dormant agent in her.
Right.
But when she's bit, it's not infecting because, well, she's already been infected. It's a crazy scenario to really break down, but it's very scientific, but it makes sense, though. And like I say, it's a little bit crazy to figure out about how this goes. And it's like I say, it's very high-level thinking about this.
But so you need a PhD for it.
Kind of, but that's the easiest way I can describe it. It's just when the cells are forming, it's basically a genetic thing that it covers up that she has it in her. So thus, if she's bit again, well, they're not going to infect because they already know that the virus is in her. So it's kind of it's a crazy way to break it down. But that's the easiest way I can do it. I'm sure other people can do it a lot more technically. We'll just go with it from there. So then we jump back into, or no, actually, I'm sorry.
Well, this is when so Marlene shows up and they go to the house and they realize something's happened because the door's open. They go into the house and they start going around, kind of like you see a SWAT team or something doing the movies where like they're going room to room, clearing the room, and they go upstairs and that's where they discover Anna and they see her slumped up against the wall, almost looks passed out, and then there's the body of the clicker next to her and they realize and they see what's happened. And Anna convinces Marlene to take Ellie to Boston.
Yep.
She's like, you need to take her to Boston. And Marlene doesn't want to do it because, as we find out, they've been friends for as long as they can remember since childhood. So 20, 30 years, however long it is.
Yeah.
You know, so, hey, you need to take Ellie and take her to Boston. This and that. Like, no, you're a fighter. You're going to make it through. So she's like, no, I'm not. You need to kill me. And Marlene flat out refuses.
Right.
She's like, no, I'm not doing it. She's like, no, you need to do it. So she does end up taking Ellie and walking out of the room, leaving Anna screaming, Marlene, no, you need to do this. And at some point, as she's about to go down the stairs, Marlene makes up the decision, you know what? I have to do this.
Yeah.
And she doesn't hesitate. She walks back in the room, confident stride as ever. Points the gun at her and immediately pulls the trigger, doesn't even wait.
Yeah, I mean, Dandra's acting in this was top notch. Like I said, just this whole scene was very powerful for what it needed to be, because you really see the toll that this has taken on her, that she has to go kill her best friend and realizes that the child might be the cure to everything. Yeah. Maybe. But at the time she doesn't know. She just goes, there's a baby that has now lost her mother and now needs somebody to watch over her. So it's like I say, it's a very powerful scene, and then from there it jumps in to present day. Yep. And this is where Joel and Ellie, obviously coming off the heels of their encounter with the cult, are kind of confiding in each other a little bit about what has gone on and what they've been through, and Joel breaks down too, and really makes the connection, to Ellie about like how much she means. And then also breaks down about when he lost his daughter, he tried killing himself.
He finally tells her about his daughter, and he tells her the truth of how he got the scar he has. And no, it wasn't because somebody shot at me and missed, and it's because I tried to shoot myself. And I missed. Yeah, it's like I say, it was a very emotional scene. And like I say, Pedro Pascal's acting through this entire episode and season has been nothing short of phenomenal. And like I say, this whole scene was a very emotional one, and one that definitely connects with the audience watching at home, that just what he's gone through, and just seeing how
the progression of his character since we saw him from episode 1 to now.
Oh, so yeah, especially like episode 1 where he's got his daughter, he's happy, he's living life, you know, and then shit hits the fan, he loses his daughter to all of a sudden he's on it 20 years later, he's on his own in Boston just trying to make ends meet. He gets thrown into a situation he wants no part of with a girl he knows absolutely nothing about, and he just views this as a mission. He views it as a job.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I got a job to do, I'm going to finish it, and then I'm going to go home. To where he's like, I can't live without you.
Yeah, they've made that connection now, that they both need each other to survive. So as they're making their way through the town, Salt Lake City as it is.
As it appears, yeah, because there was a highway sign that pointed off an exit to Salt Lake City. And they're in a fairly big city, so I'm going to go with it, Salt Lake.
Yeah, they're talking about heading back to Wyoming.
Yeah.
And
well, Joel's trying to convince her to go back to Wyoming with his brother. Like, hey, you know, we don't have to do this. We don't have to go through with this. We can just go back to Wyoming and live our lives. And Ellie goes, no, we need to do this. We need to finish the job.
Yes, but as they're heading to Salt Lake City, because that is where the Fireflies are based,
Yeah.
they get attacked.
Well, so they get attacked, but it's after they run into a giraffe.
Yeah, this was a wild moment, Pat. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so they're going through a building and they're climbing their way up, and Ellie sees something, and we never see what it is. At least I didn't see what it was. You know, she starts tearing off through this building, going parking garage, I think is what it was, going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And he's running after her, and this is a horrible idea because we're in an unfamiliar spot. We don't know who's here. We don't know who could be hunting us, this, that, and the other. And they come to find there's a giraffe.
Yeah.
Fucking roaming downtown Salt Lake City. And I thought, oh, that looks like it kind of looked like a CGI giraffe to me. Come to find out, no. Real life giraffe.
Yeah, it was real.
That was a real giraffe. Holy hell, kind of awesome.
Yeah, so it's kind of a very unique moment.
Yeah.
Because after all the trauma that they've gone through,
Yeah.
it's almost like a peaceful, happy moment. And it's kind of a weird thing because anytime you see anybody having happiness in the zombie/fungus apocalypse,
Doesn't last long.
you know it's short-lived. And it is in this case because as they're making their way through, they are attacked.
Yeah.
And you see them get taken out.
It's like a bomb or something, or like a flashbang
Yeah,
or something.
like almost like
Like a concussion grenade.
yeah, somebody is heavily armed and
Yeah.
fires that at them, disorients them. They wind up getting knocked out and taken away.
Yep.
And you see that Joel wakes up in a hospital. And sure enough, when he wakes up, the first person he sees is Marlene.
Yeah.
And she's like, congratulations, you've now accomplished the mission.
You finished the mission.
You did what you needed to. And he's immediately screaming, where's Ellie? And she's saying,
she's not in the room.
and Marlene lets it slip.
Yeah, well, she deliberately tells him, I think.
Well, yeah, but I don't think she was expecting the reaction.
No, probably not.
So, like I say, she kind of lets it slip that she's getting prepped for surgery.
Well, what's the surgery?
Yeah, and once the surgery talk happens, this is when you can tell at home the dynamic is switching in the room. Because Marlene breaks down that Ellie is immune, and we think we know why.
Right.
It's due to her cordyceps.
Which the cordyceps are in the brain.
Yes, that are in her brain. So we think that we can take the cordyceps out and give everybody a cure.
Or concoct a vaccine
Yeah.
or some sort of concoction to give to the world to make everybody immune.
Yeah. So now the dilemma is hitting Joel right in the face.
Right, because he realizes, hey, they're about to do open brain surgery. This is going to kill her.
Yeah, Ellie's going to die. So now you're left with the question that nobody is ready for.
Right.
And let alone you sit home as a viewer and you watch and go, what would you do? You've made this connection with Ellie, who reminds you very much of your daughter that is deceased. And you know that if she dies, the world is saved, but you still lose her. Can you go through this again? And that is the decision Joel has to decide upon. And it's a no-brainer to him.
Right. Well, and he even, what really sets him off, though, is he asks Marlene, did you tell her what was going on before the surgery? And she says no. So that she was never given the option of whether she wanted to go through with it or not. They just put her under and prepped her for surgery.
Well, it's a situation from their point of view.
Right.
We've got one chance to save the world.
We got one shot, one opportunity.
You going to make it or you going to let it slip?
Mm-hmm.
That's the argument that they have. That, yeah, we understand she dies, but how many other people live?
Right.
It's a weird dilemma, but this is something that in these types of shows with that apocalyptic factor involved, you see not everything is so cut and dry.
Right.
There's a lot of gray area. And what somebody's decision they might want to do might not agree with somebody else.
This is true.
And that's where you have the conflict. And Joel is sitting there screaming, you can't do this. There's got to be another way. But Marlene is saying, no, there isn't. We have to get those cordyceps. If we don't, the world is going to fall. So that's why we're going to do what we're going to have to do. Soldiers take him away. And Joel is sitting there trying to fight back and go get Ellie, but it's
Right.
failing. So he's led down a hallway
Right.
to a staircase.
Right. And he keeps every once in a little bit he kind of like stops for a minute and thinks about it. And they're like, "Hey, jackass, keep moving."
Mm-hmm. So when he's in the staircase at one point, though, he does get the upper hand.
Must have seen Captain America.
Good God. He goes on a rampage like
Yeah.
he's Frank Castle.
Yeah.
And he is killing everybody in that hospital.
With marksman-like precision.
Yeah, which we've always known he's had that skill.
Because he's firing this, I don't know what gun he was using, but he was firing off single bullets, and he was getting one shot for one kill.
Mm-hmm.
Good God.
Yeah, he was just destroying
Yeah.
everybody in his path.
I think you can count on one hand the number of times there was like more than one bullet coming out.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was like one shot.
No, it was frightening.
Yeah, it
like to
was.
say like this was
Yeah.
not a moment that you're sitting at home like
Yeah.
applauding. You're sitting there in
It's
sheer
like, holy fuck.
like in sheer horror to see like what he's doing, and like you understand why though,
Yeah.
but you may not agree with it. But for people that go, hey, if that was my child, I'd do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's a moral dilemma, and I like how the writers brought that up. But you see the consequences from the actions.
Mm-hmm.
That now Joel has gone on a full rampage.
Yeah.
Even going to the point of going into the operating room.
Yeah, and killing the main doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he goes, let her go. And the doctor refuses and goes, no, she can save the world and she can do X, Y, and Z. And he goes, let her go or I'll kill you.
Yeah.
And he goes, no. And he just shoots him right then and there.
Yeah. And we've seen through the course of this season that Joel is somebody that when he's pushed to that limit, he's not afraid to cross that line.
Right.
But this is a line that you have to wonder, can he come back from? Like, that's the problem that you now have.
Yeah.
Because once the Fireflies find out what has happened,
Oh, they ain't going to be happy.
no, that you've gone in there, you've killed people in a hospital.
There might be fireflies, but he kicked a hornet's nest.
Yeah. He now has to deal with that repercussions because as he's now taking Ellie, who's unconscious, away from the hospital, Marlene
Right.
confronts him.
Right.
Now, they have known each other for some time that we know and has been portrayed.
Well, and she's even astounded when she's kind of interrogating him in the hospital room with like some of his responses, and she looks at him and it kind of dawns on her, and she goes, "Oh, you've developed a connection with her."
Yeah. That this was unplanned, but now here we are.
Right.
But Marlene is still screaming at him, there's still time.
Right.
Realize what you're doing. And Joel kind of does a bluff
Yeah.
and then shoots her.
From underneath the blanket covering Ellie.
Yeah. In a very dastardly move.
The great bit of cinematography for this too.
Yes.
Because you don't see it initially, and you're like, "Holy!" Because the gunshot went off. I'm like, "Oh, holy shit! Who is it?"
Yeah.
Because he didn't make any move or any motion like he was shooting. So I'm like, "Oh, holy fuck! Like, who is it? Who could be? Is it his brother? Is it somebody else?" And then the camera cuts to the gun barrel pointing out from underneath the blanket, and I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah. It's a very intense scene.
yeah,
Because then you just see that Marlene is sitting there bleeding and just looking at Joel like, what did you do? And then Joel fires another shot and goes.
yeah,
Like, it's very intense for what it is.
yeah,
And it's very disturbing, too,
yeah."
to see at what lengths he would do. But like I say, with talking with people online, you're left in a weird position at that moment if you're Joel. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to sacrifice somebody that you consider your daughter?
Right.
And you've connected with on this kind of level? Even though how many millions are going to die because of your connection? It's like I say, it's an interesting debate, but it's still frightening at the consequences no matter what.
Right.
Because either Ellie dies,
Yeah.
and then how many people live, but you've now killed that person,
Right.
And then in retrospect now, because you let her live,
Right.
how many more people are going to die because of this?
Well, and Marlene even brings that up, I think, while she's pleading with him at the end or after she's been shot. I forget when.
Yeah, it was after she was shot, I think.
She's like, hey, listen, this is whatever it is, but, like, you realize she's always going to be in danger, that, like, people are going to find out about her, they're going to be hunting after her, and you're not always going to be there.
Yeah.
You're going to grow old, you're going to die, and you're going to not be there for her, and she's going to have to defend herself. Like, you can't always be there.
Right. But at the same time, Marlene doesn't know he's already done this with his first daughter.
Right.
And now he's treating Ellie like his daughter. So, like I say, it's a very intense scene. It's not one that younger viewers should be watching.
No, hell no.
It's very, like I say, intense is the probably easiest word I can describe it as.
Yeah.
But it's very powerful, too, at the same time, because you just see at what lengths Joel has now gone to over Ellie.
Yeah.
And when they leave the hospital, I mean, Joel is driving away. Mm-hmm. Ellie wakes up in the back seat of the car that he's driving.
Well, I wouldn't say wakes up. She kind of starts to recover from the after effects of the anesthesia.
Right. And she's going, hey, what happened? Did we get a cure?
Yeah.
And Joel flat out lies.
Mm-hmm. He tells her no. It turns out you weren't the only person they found that was immune from the virus, that they found others, and they tried to make an immunity, but it didn't work.
No. So now they're heading back to Jackson, Wyoming, to where they think it's safe. And Ellie is doubting Joel completely. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what tipped her off that he was lying.
I think they've been together long enough that she can tell.
Maybe. But I just thought it was very interesting that Bella Ramsey's picked up. Like I said, the acting she did for this scene I thought was very cool.
Well, especially you think about it, like she hasn't been coddled for her life, like you might expect a kid to. That like, oh, little white lie, oh yeah, Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, like whatever else.
Yeah.
Like she's had it rough her entire life, like no parents. The military upbringing with like the military boarding school or whatever it was.
Right.
Having to travel and fight for her life at a very young age, and like it's hard to get anything past this girl and expect her to not pick up on a lie.
Yeah. But like I say, I thought they pulled this off very well. And you see that Joel just goes, I swear.
Yeah.
This is the truth. And she goes,
Okay.
And that's how it ends. Whew. That was an episode. Like I say, one that if you're not familiar with the video game, it probably caught you more off guard.
Right.
I think for everybody that's played the video game, there was a lot of like, we knew this was coming.
Oh, yeah.
That was the kind of vibe that was playing off this. But, Pat, I mean, final thoughts on the episode and season.
Like I said, it was a great episode. Just a little bit more of a punch is what I was expecting. Still a great episode, though. Excited to see where they go for season 2. And I know a lot of people were concerned that we'd only get one more season because there's only 2 video games. Don't worry. There's going to be multiple seasons. Reading from an article on Variety.com. It says, quote, The Last of Us was officially renewed for a season 2 by HBO in January, but their creators are planning, quote, more than one season to tell the much larger story from the video game sequel, The Last of Us Part 2. The article goes on to say, quote, when asked if season 2 will include the entire Part 2 story, Mazin said, no way. Druckmann added, it's more than one season. So we're going to get at least one more season right now, but there's going to be more than one after that.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, the show is a hit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of difficult to say, hey, we're going to end things.
Right.
It's tough because this is the problem that you have when you come across pop culture.
Yeah.
Now, are they going to go Walking Dead and to be the never-ending story? No. But I think that doing 2 seasons, and if you split it up 6 and 6 maybe, I could definitely see that. Unless they have an idea for a third video game, but like I say, I don't know how you do that. And that's not a conversation for us. That's a conversation for the writing team. because you've now hit that threshold of pop culture where people are clamoring for more content. And when they come back, and we don't have a timetable of exactly when, I think it's going to be a year before we see them come back. This is going to play into how the show is going to be received. But if it's one thing we know, the show came in with a lot of hype from the video game audience.
Oh, yeah.
And when you attach Pedro Pascal, who is very high profile in Hollywood right now, you knew a lot of eyes were going to be on it. Bella Ramsey, people knew from Game of Thrones. So when you did that casting, you already had fan bases tuning in. They delivered on the first episode because they did not focus so much on the clickers. They made it about the connections with those characters and their families and what they felt they were family by the time it was all said and done. That's the driving point of the show. Like, sure, you can say it's like the Fast and Furious. It's all about family.
Family.
But it really is with this show. That you have Pedro Pascal's Joel, who is willing to do anything and literally anything to protect who he perceives as his daughter, Ellie, who is trying to find her way in this world by being the most hunted person on the planet because she could potentially end everything, or we don't know.
Yeah.
She could be the next phase of this virus. We haven't even explored that aspect because one thing we know about viruses, they always mutate. It's a very interesting play that they do here, but it goes to show that the writers have really taken this into account. They've really told compelling stories without making it too video game-ish, if I can use that terminology.
Yeah.
They've really focused on the characters, and this is why the show connects on that level. You need to go check the show out, and definitely let us know what you thought about the season finale. I definitely want to have some more conversations about Look for the Light. So hit us up on that hashtag ODPHpod. What is your thoughts about season 1 of The Last of Us on HBO Max? And what did you think of the season finale, Look for the Light? Hit us up. Let us know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Have you ever found yourself confused about the current state of the MCU or whatever the hell is happening with the DC universe?
Do you often have no idea what the hell the difference is between craft beer and that Bud Ice stuff at the gas station?
Well, then look no further.
We present to you Hops Geek News.
We're yet another geek and beer podcast in an already oversaturated market.
All right. We drink and we pretend we know things.
More often than not, we don't really know things, but we do talk some really great topics, and we most definitely can drink.
We'll deliver you news and then dive into any random topic you might have never knew you actually were passionate about.
With lots of fun facts about beer.
And from Marvel to DC and Star Wars, and to why Die Hard is most definitely a Christmas movie.
Which it is. Basically anything that our spouses are sick of hearing us talk about. Join us on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
New episodes weekly. Just search Hops News.
Coming back for another segment on this edition of the ODPH pod. And we said at the beginning of the show, any one of these segments could have been the lead segment. This has been a stacked week of pop culture here on the show. But we definitely can't end this show without talking about one of our favorite shows' triumphant return to the airwaves. And that is what, Pad?
That is Superman and Lois.
Yes. The last show in the Arrowverse, per se, if you will. The one that has reinvented the Man of Steel and brought it to a pop culture audience by taking it back to Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow, has returned finally with Season 3. Tyler Hoechlin, Elizabeth Tulloch are playing the roles of Clark Kent and Lois Lane, respectively. Alex Garifin is back as Jordan Kent, their son. And stepping into the role of Jonathan Kent is Michael Bishop. So the Metropolis's favorite family is now moved back to Smallville, where they thought they were going to get away from the crazy world that involves the Man of Steel, but did not happen by any way, shape, or form. In 2 seasons, they've had invaders from other dimensions and some allies come across the way via John Henry Irons, played by Wally Parks, and Natalie Irons, played by Taylor Buck. So coming off the heels of a season that made Bizarro into a tragic anti-hero by
Kinda.
the time it was all said and done.
I mean, he's always kind of been that way. It just depends on which version you're reading or watching.
Right. They've really stepped the game up for where we're going this season, because the first season tied into a brother that Kal-El had no idea about.
Tied into family.
Family. It's all about family. It always is with this show. And then we go into this season after Bizarro, and things are...
Yeah, 2 Earths.
2 Earths, and now they're back to 1. It's returning to normal. But is it really? Because we have to break down Superman and Lois season premiere for season 3, entitled Closer. So, Pad, spoiler-free statement on it.
I thought it was a good episode. Interestingly, directed by some dude named Tom Cavanaugh.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I did not realize until I was looking at the stuff online. No, I thought it was a good episode. You know, interesting to see where they're going to go. Not quite sure who the quote-unquote villain was we saw towards the end of the episode. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that. But I thought it was a good return. It was a solid episode.
I really enjoyed this because we're going to be going back to Metropolis a little bit.
A little bit.
And it's nothing against Smallville.
Superman's just so indelible with Metropolis.
Right. But when you go back to Metropolis, you usually see a few names pop up in the Superman mythos.
Yeah.
One of which we do know is coming at some point, and that's Lex Luthor.
Uh-huh.
The other one is a lesser-known name, but still one that is impactful nevertheless. And that's who we see here at the end of the show. But I thought for returning, it really captured the vibe that they've had from previous seasons.
Yeah.
And improved on certain areas. Some it did not, but I thought overall it was definitely a solid return. Excited to see where they go moving forward. That said, let's get into that spoiler talk, Pat. 3, 2, 1. What you think?
Like I said, I thought it was a fun episode. It was kind of the same familiar vibe you're used to if you watch the first 2 seasons. You know, introducing the story, introducing some of the themes we're going to see for the season, but then also keeping the family aspect of things. I thought that, I got to scroll to the name because I haven't memorized it yet. Michael Bishop playing Jonathan Kent did an absolutely phenomenal job stepping into the role.
Agreed.
You know, taking over the role of a character that's been established for 2 seasons already is not an easy thing to do, but I thought he did a great job and made it his own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm excited to see where he goes going forward with things. You know, but overall, I'm interested to see how things go, and I think we could have some very interesting developments as the season goes on with some of the core family members.
The fact that we're getting Intergang,
Yeah.
I think, is wild. And the character that you were not familiar with is Bruno Mannheim.
No, I know who he is.
That's Chad Coleman.
Yep.
That's who he was playing.
Oh, yeah. No, I know who Bruno Mannheim is. The gentleman that was with him in the room, though.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That was, okay. So that makes a little more sense. Because I was going to say, Intergang has always been a noteworthy villain in the Superman's Rogues Gallery.
Also, I made a couple of appearances in the animated series, if I remember correctly.
Yes. But where they're going with this is really kind of a wild scenario. Because
now that I see the comic picture, yeah, he was in the animated series.
Yeah. But it's kind of a wild scenario what they're doing here, because where this series picks up, it's been literally just about a month.
27 days. They say it repeatedly.
Yeah. Which I thought was very interesting too, but I was like...
It's like The Flash. 9 months.
Yeah.
9 months. 27 days.
But hopefully it's a lot better than this current season. I'm just going to say that outright. But nevertheless, it's 27 days since they defeated the threats from Earth 2.
They give a nice little summary of what happened.
Yeah, they give a nice summary. And we get back into the swing of things with the Kent family.
Yep.
Jordan is now learning how to use his powers. They
Yep.
have a new Fortress of Solitude that Clark has set up at the end of last season.
Yep.
And you're seeing that they're having a bonding moment because Jordan is now really taking the time to learn to control his powers.
And he's able to use them a little more controlled.
Yeah.
It's not so erratic.
He's definitely not so wild with them.
Yeah.
But they have a very cool scene where they're flying to the fortress and Jordan's talking a little trash to his dad, and
his dad trips him up.
his dad is not hearing this one bit. So he trips him up a little bit. He goes flying into the ocean, and then he has to come in. He has to face the atomic skull on the
hologram projector.
For sparring reasons. So it's a cool moment to see that they're training Jordan.
After he comes in sopping wet and he looks at his dad and he goes, I got to start wearing a wetsuit when we fly here. And his dad just looks at him and goes, yeah, we can make that happen.
Yeah. So meanwhile, back in Smallville, there's a bunch of different stories going on. One of which is Sam Lane, Lois's dad, played by Dylan Walsh.
Yeah.
Has rejoined the DOD after retiring.
Yeah, so much for that retirement.
Yeah, which it makes sense.
Yeah. You got to keep him around story-wise.
Yeah, because otherwise, like, unless he was planning on leaving the show, like, I don't understand.
Right. You can't just keep having him show up repeatedly throughout the show's history of like, oh, hey, we need your help again. Oh, shucks, we need you again. Like, just have him rejoin.
Yeah, so it makes sense. And I like how they had him connected with the Irons family.
Yeah.
So like we said, Wooly Parks is back playing John Henry Irons. Taylor Buck is playing his daughter, Natalie. And you see that Sam Lane is trying to befriend Natalie, who's really struggling to connect. Obviously, we saw her make her appearance from the alternate timeline at the end of season 1, and she still has taken a little time getting used to being on this earth, and obviously knowing the back history that her mom was Lois Lane.
Yeah.
So technically, Sam is her grandfather. It's a little awkward in that sense, but they're trying to make that connection. And you see that Sam is really trying to make, a real effort about connecting with his granddaughter.
Yeah.
And says, we can go to the movies and, really have a bonding experience. And she is very excited about this.
She's like, oh, I would love that.
Yeah. And then it turns out that, no, he was just doing it to recruit her for the DOD.
Well, she first picks up on it because they're going to see like this sci-fi horror movie, Slaughterhouse 3 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And she's breaking down the movie, and she's starting to pick up that like he has no idea what the movie's about. And she drops this like tidbit of information about the movie, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I can't believe that would happen." And it's like probably like some character that had died like in one of the previous movies. And she's like, "You've never seen any of these movies, have you?" And he's like, "No." And that's when he reveals, "Oh no, I'm not here for the movie. I'm here to recruit you."
Yeah, so it's kind of an awkward scenario that's playing out there, but it's one that we'll have to keep an eye on moving forward, because with Sam Lane back, his job at the DOD is basically defending the Earth from Superman and anything that comes with it.
Yeah.
So it does make for an awkward moment moving forward, but it's something that at least I love the fact they're giving the Irons family a real storyline.
Oh, I do too.
Because I know that I think they've had so much potential to really break out, and I think this is the perfect way to do it. So I'm super excited to see how this goes and really play off the other family members too, because with the Kents, Jonathan had a really, I don't want to say subdued episode this season for the premiere, but the only thing that was really kind of focusing is it was him and Jordan's birthday. He was trying to get his driver's license, so there was some kind of awkward moments going on because he still doesn't have superpowers yet.
Although we got to say, boy, hell of a driver's test getting it from your former football coach.
Yes, because Jonathan was kicked off the team for illegal steroids, to put it mildly.
I mean, essentially.
I mean, it was what it was.
Yeah. ...
Yeah. So, like I say, he didn't really have that big of a party or a moment other than the party too.
Yeah.
But they did give Jordan a little bit of time too there as well, and they did go back and tease the romance with Sarah as well.
The on again, off again, off again.
Yeah, which I have to say, like, I understand why they do it. I think at this point it's like,
to just commit or don't.
Yeah, just like stop.
This is Smallville syndrome. This is 6 seasons of wanting Clark to get together with Lana, where even the showrunners have admitted now, like, we dragged that out way too long.
Yeah, it's way too much.
Just get them together or split them apart, please.
Yeah, like there's no point to just have this going, because I'm sorry, like I didn't feel that invested about it to the stage of...
I was for a season.
Yeah, like for a season, sure.
We're 3 seasons in now, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one downside about this is just kind of like, okay, what are we doing here?
I'll say Peter Parker and Mary Jane, this ain't.
Yeah, that's the biggest deal with this, too. So they have to figure out a way to just move on from this, or whatever you're going to do for it. I'm sorry. Like
they still want to be friends, but they don't want to be together.
Yeah, it just got...
it don't work that way.
No, it just got annoying, to be honest with you. But, like I say, we've gone down this before, so hopefully they kind of clean it up as the season moves forward. However, though, we do see that Lana Lang, played once again by Emmanuel Kirky, is now getting used to the mayoral role of Smallville.
Doing well.
Yeah, doing well, because she's trying to clean up something going on at Smallville High School, which we're dealing with more of the past with the former mayor, and there's a lot of weird stuff.
Shit ton of black mold in the high school.
Yeah, so you see the former mayor George Dean is sitting there arguing about it, and Lana is such a good person. She's like, "No, we're going to deal with this. I know what you did with your fund, so we're going to have to really kind of make something happen here to clean this up." So I like how they're building up for that story. So everybody had one. However, though, Lana's divorce from her husband,
Oh boy,
got more messy.
talk about a dark cloud
This season. I mean, Kyle Cushing, who's played by Eric Valdez, he just can't stay out of his own way.
Nope.
He finds ways to do this. And after the boy's birthday party, he winds up hooking up with Chrissy Bepop, or Bepo, I'm sorry, from the Smallville paper.
Yeah, which, I mean, as soon as she showed up and she started talking, I kind of saw this coming.
You saw it coming. There's nothing wrong with this either. Like I say,
It was kind of telegraphed.
I like how she's getting more involved in the show.
Yeah.
Because I think her character is very interesting.
Underutilized, too.
Very much so. And like I say, with this now playing out, I think there's a lot that you can do with her character. And Sophia Hamzik, who plays her, I think she does an amazing job. The one thing that threw me off, though, with her,
Yeah.
I forgot she realized that Clark was Superman.
Well, I think they briefly mentioned it in the little recap, like at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, but when I saw it, like I
So
forgot.
if you blink and miss that moment, yeah, I can understand.
Yeah, because I remember last season she figured it out, and,
Right.
and now is very understanding when he takes off for Metropolis.
Yeah.
So I thought that their storyline, that's going to be very interesting. And like I say, I love seeing her more involved in the show. But this show is called Superman and Lois for a reason, because they're the ones that are really stirring everything up here. You do see that Lois, obviously after last season, was tipped off about the true John Henry Irons.
At some point, yeah, off screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now she's been going out of her way to investigate what happened to this world's John Henry Irons.
Yep.
And has now put her in direct line with people connected to Bruno Mannheim.
Mm-hmm.
So we do see that she winds up having a doctor's visit with John Henry Irons' sister, played by Angel Parker. And you do see that it comes up in that conversation that this world's John Henry Irons was involved in some things he probably should not have been.
Yeah.
Making weapons for Intergang.
Yeah.
And it's kind of dismayed a little bit by the doctor saying, Lois, you might be pregnant.
Right. Well, and even the whole conversation starts with a not so friendly demeanor, because clearly, because Lois even brings up earlier in the episode, like they've tried to pin a ton of stuff on Bruno Mannheim before, but it's never stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as Dr. Irons opens the door and sees Lois, she's like, oh, God damn it, you again?
Yeah. So it's definitely a storyline to keep an eye moving forward, because for Superman, he's now brought into the Intergang world as well, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because obviously keeping an ear out for the dangers in the world.
Yeah.
He's brought into one where he sees Jordan is trying to stop a skyscraper from breaking.
In Manila or someplace like that? Somewhere in the South Pacific, yeah.
Yeah, so he has to break away to do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go the way he's saying. So he's still saying he's trying to sell Jordan. He needs to stay out of the business and learn the craft.
Well, because it was kind of hard to tell just because it was raining and it was dark and this and that. But it looked like the crane was falling over, and it looked like Jordan was trying to heat vision off a part of it. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
It's just the inexperience that he has.
Yeah.
That's the problem, that he's trying to do too much, and it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest situation that he's going to have to struggle against. So you do see this play out later, because when Clark has to go to Metropolis and really take on a threat, Jordan hears about this and doesn't get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a weird scenario that plays out here.
And Sarah can tell something's bugging him.
Yeah, because Superman takes off from Metropolis.
Yeah.
He runs into somebody he hasn't seen in a little while.
Yeah, Henry Miller, a.k.a. Atom Man.
Yeah, who's in a suit. Almost looked like something out of BioShock, to be honest with you.
BioShock, I was also thinking a little bit of the Firestorm suit.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
But he's super powered, and Clark is going, where did you get your powers from?
What the fuck happened?
Yeah. So they get into this fantastic action sequence.
Knockdown, drag-out fight.
Yeah.
Bridges destroyed. Buildings toppled.
Yeah. It's a wild scene to see play out, but one thing we always say is with the show, you're almost guaranteed to have a great action sequence and special effects.
Yeah.
So when you see this play out, this makes for a very, very cool moment amongst the show, and you're seeing them just tear right through Metropolis. They're breaking buildings. They're destroying everything in sight. It's a really interesting visual to see play out. So once you see this go, you see that Clark eventually winds up stopping him.
Yeah.
But there's a villain that shows up that you didn't recognize.
Well, so he stops him, and then he drops dead, and it's almost like he got shot. Mm-hmm. And he goes looking around, and instantly the X-ray vision kicks in. And my God, I don't remember the X-ray vision being like this before in this show. But like, it's not an instantaneous. It clicks on. It kind of just like slowly turns on, and it bridges. I love the special effects they did for this X-ray vision. Mm. And he's looking around. He doesn't see anything, and he looks at the body, and he goes, "Wait a minute. There's no bullet holes."
Yeah, it's a crazy scenario to see play out.
Right.
And I actually had to do some web searching about this.
Okay.
This is a villain I was not expecting to see, and I have not seen this one in quite some time. Pad, I know you are not familiar with Onomatopoeia, but this is a character that was around during Kevin Smith's run on Green Arrow way back when.
Okay.
So this is kind of an interesting story to see that character appear here. Mm-hmm. So this is something the show does, and I think they do it very well. They take very obscure or characters you just don't think would be
right
in the mix here.
Right.
And then sure enough, they find a way to make it work. And seeing that character show up now with Intergang, that's going to be an interesting dynamic to say the least. And it's one that Superman is definitely going to have a struggle with against. And seeing how this all shapes up, I mean, this is just crazy to see just ultimately factor in.
Right.
Because when you have shows that are willing to take a shot and do the obscure villains, and like I say, this is one that is just as obscure as possible.
That's probably real deep in the obscurity.
Yeah. But we have seen this character appear a few times over the years, but nothing really that you go like, whoa.
Well, say never a main feature for like a Justice League book.
Yeah. But like I say, I always know it from the Kevin Smith run on Green Arrow that was back in the early 2000s. Seeing this character show up through Superman for a loop and really cause some problems with him.
Yeah.
And you see that he's now understanding that there's a new threat in Metropolis. That
because he starts hearing all these voices freaking out and all these people freaking out. So he flies up into the sky, looks around, realizes there's nothing going on. The voices stop. He lands, and the body and the figure are gone.
Yes. So once he comes to, obviously, something weird has happened and starts heading back to Smallville to regroup. All the while, you see that Henry Miller has been taken underground and is getting experimented on. And Pad, who is the one overseeing these experiments?
That would be Chad L. Coleman, a.k.a. Bruno Mannheim.
Yeah, so they're now toying with reanimation.
Like I say, because this dude's dead. He's got, the EKG machine or whatever it is hooked up to him. Flatline, all three lines. Dead as a doornail.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, listen, we can't do anything here. This ain't going to work. And they eventually do end up resurrecting the dead.
Yeah, it was a crazy scene to close out with. So I don't know what the end game is going to be here. I really don't.
I mean, I'm almost afraid you can bring people back from the dead. Yikes.
Well, you have to think about how many characters they could really play around with.
Sure.
I don't necessarily know if they would do this with Superman's brother.
Well, they can't
because he's on a different dimension.
Then that gets brought up because when Clark and Lois a couple times go to his villa in like Spain or wherever the fuck it is, at one point they're like, "Oh, hey, we really got to thank your brother for letting us use his villa," and he goes, "Well, that's kind of hard seeing as he's on Bizarro World."
Yeah, so it's a situation that they can't really bring him back, but yet they could. I mean, it's a television, so obviously they can pull something off.
It's almost a case of like you can't stop anybody because even if you manage to kill them, they'll just bring them back.
Yeah, and you almost have to wonder if they would try doing this with the John Henry Irons of this world. Ooh. Like that's the possibilities they're going to open up. But with them making moves in Metropolis, you know that's going to bring the attention of one Lex Luthor.
Oh, yeah.
Now, how they ultimately face off with each other is still yet to be told.
Still did not see him this episode.
No, we didn't. I don't think we're going to see him for a little bit, to be honest with you.
Probably not.
Which is fine. If they want to try splitting this up and give half the season to Intergang and then the other half to Luthor, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we know Michael Cutlitz is playing Lex Luthor. It's already been announced, so that's not a big reveal or spoiler for anybody.
Right.
But how they want to set this up is anybody's guess. But
Yeah.
I thought overall everybody had a good story to tie off with this season. I know Lois is dealing with both the investigation, and then it was debunked about the pregnancy, and she still has to get more tests done, which I still think there's something fishy going on with Dr. Irons.
Well, there could be, and I'm also concerned with what is going on. Because she goes, hey, turns out you weren't pregnant, which really bummed out the Kents because, as old as the boys are getting, they were kind of longing for another young one in the house again. Mm-hmm. But the fact oh, hey, there's something going on. We're not quite sure what it is. We're going to do more testing. Yeah, that can't be good.
No, it can't. But I almost wonder, because she was there, if it was something she tipped off Bruno Mannheim.
Yeah, that could be.
And they're going to do something kind of weird there. Like, that's my early prediction about that. But like I say, everybody else had a moment to shine in the show. And like I said, the Kyle Chrissy thing was very interesting and got even more awkward when Lana came by with divorce papers.
Yeah.
But it goes to show, like, the writers on the show really take the time to dive into everybody on here. And everybody has a storyline going on. Some we like more than others. We're not going to lie about that.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought they came back with a really strong debut. And I'm really intrigued by where we're going after this.
Yeah.
What about you, Pat?
No, I'm super intrigued, too, to see where things go, just because there's a lot of storylines, more so than normal, that I'm like, I really want to see where this is going. I'm super excited for next week's episode because I'm looking at the director list for this next week's episode titled Uncontrollable Forces. Some woman by the name of Elizabeth Henstridge.
Oh, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., let's go.
Yeah, getting a little fun connection there.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see one half of Fitzsimmons back.
Yeah.
So definitely have to stay tuned for that. And if I'm going to be watching anything on the CW, this is the show I'm going to be watching. We will get into that next segment, trust me. But in the meantime, hit us up on that hashtag ODPH pod. What is your thoughts about the return of Superman and Lois on the CW? Did you watch it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? And why? You know we talk about that show each and every time, so let's do it. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's Alan Dunford here from Top Hat Studios, co-writer and co-creator of Pocus Hocus and Grandma Chainsaw, and you guys are listening to the ODPH podcast.
Gotta be down to the punch, 'cause they can't bring me down if I'm already under the ground.
Coming back for the final segment on this edition of the ODPH podcast. Pat, what you got?
Got two things to talk about. The first of which was some news announced today, and that is, the news we all figured would come, and that is James Gunn is going to direct the upcoming Superman movie Legacy. Reading from an article on HollywoodReporter.com, it says, quote, James Gunn is officially making Superman Legacy his next directorial vehicle. Gunn has been writing the feature since before he became the co-head of DC Studios in November, and it was widely expected he would direct. Though it was unclear if he would, given his duties overseeing the expanding DC slate with partner Peter Safran. Superman Legacy will be the first big screen feature for the Gunn-Safran era. Warner Brothers has the project dated for July 11th, 2025. Quote, it focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks that kindness is old-fashioned, Safran told reporters in late January. On Wednesday, Gunn explained that he hesitated to take on a Superman movie, even though he was offered the character before ultimately taking on the Suicide Squad for Warner's. Quote, I initially said no because I didn't have a way in that felt unique and fun and emotional, and that gave Superman the dignity he deserved, Gunn wrote on Twitter. Then, a bit less than a year ago, I saw a way in many ways centering around Superman's heritage, how both his aristocratic Kryptonian parents and his Kansas farmer parents inform who he is and the choices he makes, close quote. Even after deciding to write, he was hesitant to direct, explained the filmmaker. Just because I write something doesn't mean I feel it in my bones visually and emotionally, enough to spend over 2 years directing it, especially not something of this magnitude. But the long and the short of it is, I love this script, and I'm incredibly excited as we begin this journey, close quote.
Well, really a no-brainer, to be honest with you. And I think for anybody that was curious if he was going to not have his stamp on this, I think this definitely proves he's fully invested, and this is going to be his vision of what he wants to see at the DC studios moving forward. I love the idea he's doing this. I know there's a lot of fear about this because obviously it's younger Superman. We don't know what we're going to get, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Listen, Gunn understands the temp in the room, and he's the face of the studio now. He's going to put his stamp of approval on here. There's no question about this. I think it's a great move. I'm super excited to see what he's going to do for the project.
Right.
And I don't think he's going to miss. I think that if there's going to be one movie that's going to hit out of the, I call the dawn of DC Studios.
Right.
This is going to be the one to do it.
Oh, yeah. And then switching over to some anime news, the final episodes of Ash and Pokemon are airing over in Japan. However, they haven't hit the States quite yet. But of course, being the internet, it's hitting the airwaves. And one of the features of Pokemon that has been there since literally episode 2 or 3 has been Team Rocket. And no, I'm not talking the group from the games. I'm talking about the trio of miscreants known as Jesse, James, and their Pokemon partner Meowth, who have been literally trying to catch Pikachu for 25 years. You know, it's funny if you go back and watch the original series, which here in the States, I know it's on Netflix. Overseas, you'll have to check your own streaming services. But it's funny to go watch those first few episodes, especially when Team Rocket first gets introduced, because they're treated as so serious and such a villainous threat. And to the point where they become like the comedic joke and okay, we know they're never going to actually capture Pikachu.
Right.
You know, the fact that they've tried for 25 years and they've almost come close, a bunch of times, but never actually quite closed the deal. But it was wondered with Pokemon ending Ash's journey, what's going to happen with Team Rocket? Are they going to move on? Are they going to go off into the sunset? Is it going to be one last chase and then, that's it? Well, we kind of got the answer because the episode has aired and Team Rocket kind of goes off in their own directions. So, according to a description from Nerdist.com, they do make one valiant effort to capture Pikachu for the last time, using a lot of the former Pokemon they've used over the years. Of course, hey, it's Team Rocket. They've been trying for 25 years. They're 0 and God knows what number.
Right.
They're winless. They fail. They blast off again for one final time. They land, come to. And they go, and there's a shot floating around on Twitter where it's Jesse, James, and Meowth all standing, walking away from each other with their Pokemon, looking from over the years, looking up at them and on the screen. So Team Rocket, it appears, will not be making Jesse, James, and Meowth. It appears will not be making an appearance in whatever comes later down the road from the Pokemon anime franchise because they decided to split off and go their own separate ways. Which is kind of wild to think of. I didn't know what they were going to do with the characters. I didn't think they'd bring them back.
Yeah.
Just because they've been chasing one character for so long and for literally 25 years. I can't imagine them coming back like, oh, hey, you know what? We fell for 25 years. Why don't we try something else? So truly an end of an era is upon us.
Yeah, no, it's big moves in the Pokemon universe. I mean, obviously, we know how things are wrapping up. So
it's going to be interesting to see where they go.
It's going to be wild to see how this all plays out. All right, so before we get into comic talk, because I have to address something. I put it on social media. I was going to do it for the brand.
Oh, God.
I did it. Don't ever say I don't do anything for you, ODPH Society.
He put himself through hell.
Oh, my God. I caught Gotham Knights, the debut show involving the teens of Gotham that was on after Superman and Lois.
Yeah, so this, of course, is the CW show that's not tied into the Arrowverse, not tied into the Superman and Lois verse. It's its own kind of thing where we know, this isn't a spoiler, we know this from the trailers, that Batman is dead and the Bat family is rallying to take up the mantle of protecting Gotham City and finding who killed Batman.
Yeah. So I'm not going to even shy away from this. We're going to get into spoiler talk.
I mean, I think we should be transparent. We heard about the concept, like, okay, that could be something. Saw the trailer and went, fuck, that looks awful.
Yeah. So I went in with this. I gave it an open mind. I genuinely did.
Okay.
So this is my spoiler review, though.
Okay.
The show never planted its feet before it started running.
Oh, boy.
Like, within the first few moments, you're introduced to Batman's new adopted son, Turner Hayes.
Okay.
And the only thing you pick up on him is He was adopted more or less the same way that Bruce adopts everybody else. They're orphaned by their parents being killed off for reasons.
I'll say a sad set of circumstances.
Yeah, there's reasons behind it. Yeah, so you understand. Okay, but they never say why.
Okay.
So you see him, and it's typical rich kid. He's at high school. His best friend is a character we know known as Stephanie Brown, aka Spoiler.
Okay.
So they're kind of BFFs, and you see like he's doing fencing at Gotham High, and then all of a sudden goes like, "Hey, let's have a party." So we have a party at Wayne Manor. Because why, Pad? Reasons. Meanwhile, at Wayne Tower, you see 3 kids trying to break into Bruce Wayne's office, which has this nice skyline over Gotham. You know, it's amazing, whatever. And these 3 kids turn out to be Harper Row, who you know from the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run.
Okay.
Bluebird. Her brother, Cullen, and a character from the comics we know as Dula, who claims that she is the Joker's daughter.
Okay.
Grew up in Arkham.
Okay.
Okay, so here we are.
Okay.
They break in the office, and they were paid mysteriously $100,000 to steal Joe Chill's gun from a safe.
Okay.
They go in, and the gun is warm. Like it was just used.
Right, just handled. Okay.
They look out the window, and in blood, the bat is dead, and broken, lying on the street, dead, is Bruce Wayne with the mask on.
Okay.
Still in a suit, mind you.
Sure.
But he's been killed.
Sure.
By somebody shot him and killed him, throw him out the window.
Sure.
Well, all of a sudden, Gotham PD rolls up. These 3 get arrested.
Okay.
They pull up to Wayne Manor to tell Turner, who's having middle of party with whoever is supposed to be the Alfred of this universe, I am assuming.
Okay. They never actually say Alfred?
No, Alfred's not here. There's somebody else that's watching the house.
Christ.
So it's a weird thing going on.
Oh, Christ.
So you have Harvey Dent, who's played by Misha Collins from Supernatural fame, Castiel. So
yeah.
And he's trying to make this happen, and it's
trying his best.
Yeah, this is just not coming down. So you do see that he's there, and he's trying to tell Turner, Bruce is dead, and like all of a sudden you see the rich kid partying is like now trying to emotionally connect, like, oh man, this is wrong and whatever. Meanwhile, at the party, there's a mysterious girl that's walking around that he is like, oh, do I know you? And she's like, oh, we have classes together, and we turn out later that she's Carrie Kelly.
Okay.
The Robin from The Dark Knight Returns.
I'll say the name rang a bell for a second there.
Yeah. Which I gotta admit, I did not mind her. She was Navia Robinson.
Okay.
I thought she was okay on the show, so I don't mind her at all. But where it all plays out is you don't know that she's Robin until late in the show.
Right.
Because what happens is these 3 kids are arrested for the murder of Bruce Wayne, and suddenly Turner finds his way into the Batcave that he has never known about because the entire time he's never known Bruce's bats.
Right.
He breaks in with Stephanie. They randomly hack into the codes of the bank accounts.
Oh, convenient.
And they find out that the $100,000 used to pay for the 3 kids came out of Turner's bank account.
Ooh.
He's now arrested for murder. The 4 of them are now getting taken to Blackgate Prison.
Yeah.
And Dula, the Joker's daughter, is the only one picking up that, we were set up. I don't know who gave me the $100,000, but we were all set up. They're going to kill us.
Right.
So Turner, who can't fight his way out of anything, like you see him get punked out in the prison cell.
Right.
She's going, do you want to die? Because you now need to leave with us or you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So they somehow cause this police van that they're in to crash.
Oh, boy.
Which they take out the driver. So you see Turner is like sticking his hand through the divider there, trying to drive one-handed.
Right.
They crash the thing.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, they wind up coming out, and all of Gotham PD is standing there waiting, like with guns drawn on them.
Right.
And she's like, and Dula is the only one smart enough. She pulls the gun from one of the officers and has one of the officers held at point and said, like, we're leaving. You're not killing us.
Right.
So Turner gets in the way and says, no, my dad wouldn't do this. And she's going, you don't realize they're going to kill us.
Yeah.
They're all in on this.
Yeah.
Like, what are you missing? And sure enough, the one cop goes, yeah, she's right. You guys are going to die. And you're taking the fall for this. So all of a sudden, Robin makes the appearance. Big time explosions because she's throwing detonators around, gets them out of there. They wind up escaping to the clock tower that you see from Birds of Prey.
Right.
Meanwhile, Gotham is completely going crazy right now. They brought back the Misfits gang from The Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they're now saying, well, we're now on the run. We need to figure out who did this. And during this time, you see basically like Bluebird and her brother like have pickpocketed everybody involved. They find a coin. Pad, this coin has an owl on it. Who is this involving?
Court of Owls?
Yep.
Oh, Christ.
So the Court of Owls have arranged this, and you see that Dula is freaking out because she understands what that coin means, but everybody else has no idea what's going on, and she's basically saying, we're dead, because they're now sending the Talon after us.
Oh, Christ.
And it ends with the Talon cutting the head off. Literally. You see the decapitation of the cop's head
Right.
that let these kids go by his car, and he's now running around town with his sword looking for them.
Right.
All the while, the whoever was supposed to be Alfred in this universe is sitting at Wayne Manor with the coin.
Oh, Jesus.
So it's been a setup this entire time.
Good Lord.
Fade to black.
Well, for what it's worth, according to TVLine.com, Gotham Knights debuted to 602,000 viewers and a 0.1 rating, quote, which is on par with what Walker Independence opened with in the fall, which was 615,000 and a 0.1, leading out the network's other most watched program. Superman and Lois did phenomenal, 753,000.
Okay.
It's on par with
That's
this-
on par for the CW. That's fine.
and for what it's worth, this is. I don't think it's going to get any better. I'm not going to watch the show just because.
No, I'm out. I'm out.
It sounds fucking terrible, but the IGN review, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but like just the little summary. So if you've never read an IGN review, they have the full long thing, and they have like a little summary of like the TLDR, too long didn't read.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and now mind you, this isn't for episode 1. This is for episodes 1 through 6.
Okay. Okay, let's
So
go.
the CW's Gotham Knights season 1 episodes 1 through 6 review. Now, for those who don't know, IGN does things out of 10. This is a 4. And it's bad. Quote, with a cast of too many bland, forgettable characters and a central mystery that's anything but compelling, Gotham Knights stands as one of the weakest live-action Batman projects in a long time, close quote.
I'm hard-pressed not to agree with him. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I think that's spot on. I just think that they had too many characters that didn't stand out, and honestly, I could not care about the new Bat-Son, whoever he is.
So here's the thing. Like, the Arrowverse, they kind of loosely touched on Batman with Batwoman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Superman and Lois universe never even mentioned. This is clearly, as we said, not tied into any of those two universes. So this is its own thing. I think where it could have done better is kind of like with the game. We're like, oh, it's
Why did you tie it to the video game?
Well, you could, or even just like, oh, the characters are already pre-established. You know, they're already a family. They're already a thing, and go from there rather than this convoluted. Hey, we made up this other adopted kid for him to bring in. That's not Tim, Jason. You know,
Dick or Damien.
Dick or Damien. It's somebody new, and we're going to bring in a Joker's daughter. Like, why? Why are we making it this convoluted?
Exactly. That was my problem with
You've
this.
already got the pieces. You've got Batman, who's been around for like 80 some odd years, whatever the hell it ends up being. You don't need to make it this convoluted. The blueprint is there. You just need to put it together.
That's exactly the point, Pat. You literally sat here and you combined 5 people together out of different eras of Batman.
Yeah.
And this is kind of why Batman Superman Dawn of Justice failed. You try doing too much with too many parts.
Yeah.
And you don't establish anything for me to care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. I have the Turner Hayes did nothing for me. Like, I was like, what are we supposed to do? At one point at the gravesite of Bruce Wayne, he gives his very emotional speech, and I'm like, you were not acting like this prior. And if you want me to say you flipped a switch and now start caring, like, I'm sorry, I don't buy this. And it's nothing against the actor who played him. I just thought the writing was just all over the place. And especially when you try doing the Joker's daughter, like, I'm sorry, I've never liked the character.
Sure.
I just saw because it comes from the time of when they were doing this, like the Bat families and the Joker families. And this one is always kind of hanged around hung around a little bit, I should say.
Sure.
And like it hanged around in the shadows here. So like every now and then you'll see it like Dula appear.
Sure.
But it's never been a main lead character. But however, she, I thought, had at least an interesting story to say something, but it wasn't enough to make me go, oh, I'm in.
This is a thread I can hang on to.
Yeah. Harper Row, I know from the Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo run. So I'm like, okay, cool.
We'll say Court of Owls too.
Yeah, Court of Owls. Like I said, the minute I saw Court of Owls, I'm like, man, I love Court of Owls, but I don't love this.
Right.
Because this was literally, how are 5 teens that only one has training under Bruce Wayne going to be able to stop the Court of freaking Owls, who literally went into Batman's house, took it over, went into Batman's office, killed him, and framed him, like framed 4 random kids for it.
Right.
Like, what are we doing here?
That's why I say, like, if you take the framework of this story where, like, Bruce is dead and the Court of Owls did it, and, the Bat family's got to unite to figure out who did it. If this is, like, the DC animated universe or something tied in with, like, say, Batman the Animated Series, I'd believe it. Because they're established, they're around, they're experienced. Like, okay, I can believe that. But, like, with this, you got a bunch of Joe Blows and Jane Does off the street who, like, don't know shit from Shinola when it comes to a fight?
Yeah.
And they're expected to stop all this? No.
Exactly. No. Like you said, like, Turner Hayes has never fought anybody on the show. Like, he got, like, they had a quote-unquote fight in prison, like, in the cell against the guards, and he was getting punked out bad.
I can only suspend disbelief for so long.
Yeah, like, that's the whole problem with this. That I'm just saying, you're going, how are these kids going to fight their way from the Court of Owls? And I'm like I said, the one Robin I understand. Sure, you're trained under Batman, so at least you have an idea what you're doing. Everybody else is very, very new to this whole world. And the daughter from the Joker grew up in Arkham, so she at least knows who villains are. But I'm sorry, like, Stephanie Brown is basically Oracle here. She's a computer hack.
Right.
Well, that's not how she is in the comics. So, like, you try doing too much without establishing a connection for me as a fan to watch. And I could care less if they got arrested or not. I really don't. Like, it was just such a mess with where they were going, and they tried doing too much with too little set in stone to build off of. It didn't do it for me. I know a couple people really liked it, and listen, if you did, hey, that's cool. I'm not knocking you on your fandom. I'm just saying this is not for me, and if you want to have a discussion about this show, hashtag ODPH pod. I will talk about it, but I'm one and done with this. I'm sorry. This just is not for me. If you're watching it, let me know if it gets better, but I'm sorry. I can't. Just too much real messy storylines for me to really care about moving forward. I got a lot of stuff to do on my time, including reading comics. Yeah. So let's segue into that, Pad.
Yeah, so I got 2 this week, both of them Star Wars. It's kind of a quiet week of things overall. So the first one is Star Wars Yoda, issue number 5. And the description of this is, quote, Rise of the Dark Side. There is a darkness rising among the latest Jedi initiates. Will Master Yoda and Master Dooku be able to recognize and stop the threat? Or will their young students be led astray by the dark side of the Force? This one coming from Jody Hauser, and then Luke Ross is the artist. Highly recommend this series. It's a great, fun read. And then lastly, and certainly not leastly, Star Wars The High Republic Adventures, issue number 3 from Daniel Jose Older, who is the author, wrote a couple of books as well. And then from Tony Bruno, who is the artist. Quote, hidden aboard the Dark Grax ship, Sav, Maz Kanata, and her crew pause to plot their next move, while the villainous Arkik makes preparations to acquire a devastating new weapon. When the deal goes explosive, Sav must make an important decision: save her new friends or save her own skin. So definitely recommend those 2 because, hey, Star Wars High Republic, as I've said, some of the best storytelling they've done in quite some time that is not from Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with those picks, Pat. Great selections. For me this week, it's very, very solid lineup. A few books definitely you want to keep on the radar. First, from Comixology Originals, Grammaton Punch. Now, Pad, I know you're not into horror stuff.
Nope.
But this one you might be into. Are you into ghost stories?
Kind of.
Okay, so this is a story about a young boy who is born during a solar eclipse.
Okay.
And he winds up getting the power of seeing ghosts. So growing up, he goes through this weird phase where he can see them and he's more or less getting his energy drained from them.
Okay.
Until he realizes he can actually touch them.
Oh.
So there's one that's haunting, and then literally you see him knock the holy heck out of it. And almost like a anime style punch. So this book was a lot of fun. Like I said, Grammaton Punch by Miles Gunter and Brian Anden. And this team really did something for me. Like I say, I was going in this not really knowing what to expect, but I was really surprised at what I saw. And this is a fun story. Like where it goes definitely was the surprise of the week for me. So Comixology Originals, definitely recommend picking that up online. So you definitely want to keep that on your radar when you get to the comic shops. Next up, though, we have probably my pick of the week. And this has been a book that we've been talking about for a while now, and it's finally here from our good friends over at Black Market Narrative and Image Comics. No One, #1. Kyle Higgins, Brian Bacellato, and Geraldo Borges introduce a murder mystery into the Massiverse like nobody else. This book is absolutely phenomenal. And this is also the one that has the companion podcast, Who Is No One, with Rachel Lee Cook and Patton Oswalt.
Oh, okay.
So you do need to check out both, but it plays into each other because when a string of murders are happening in Pittsburgh, you're seeing now a mystery is getting unraveled. And there's a lot of moving parts happening here. And there's more or less like 3 central characters at this stage you got to keep your eyes on. And it ends with a real shock in the system, so to speak. And it's one that I didn't see coming, but I will tell you what, I was absolutely blown away by this issue.
Right.
I am super excited to dive into this. It's going to be 10 issues last I heard, maxi series, and then I don't know where we're going after this, but the issue is out today. The podcast is dropping today, last I checked. So definitely make sure you're following both. We will be talking about this on ODPH, social media, and Nerd Initiative going into the months ahead. So definitely keep your eyes out for that. Can't really spoil what's going on in Nerd Initiative with that just yet, but you'll definitely hear about it on the social media. So just going to put that out there.
Nice.
So from Boom Studios, Berserker 12 pad is finally out. This is the conclusion of the Keanu Reeves story.
Oh, yeah.
Involving Matt Kent, Ron Garney. Really wild ending, but one that I was not super surprised at, so to speak, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
The story has been about a half man, half god who has been immortal and is an ultimate killing machine and is trying to find a way to end his life because he's just gone through too much violence and just the existence part has been a question that's plagued them, like, why am I here and when does this finally end? This vicious cycle that just lives over and over. The ending is very intense for the first half, and then it goes in a couple different directions that I did see coming, but a couple of them I didn't. Mm-hmm. It will leave readers that have stuck with this book with a satisfying ending. I truly do feel that. But I feel that they've got a lot of things coming out with this franchise, with Netflix involved, a live-action adaptation, and then an anime, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So there's a lot that that will be going on with this that for the ending in this comic format, I thought was very, very solid. And I will say I wasn't super surprised at a few things. A couple did really throw me off, though. I'm not going to lie about that. But it ends just as you would kind of have an idea that it might, but still a very solid ending that you want to pick up. If you haven't read it, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not for the squeamish.
Right.
It's a lot of intense violence going on there. So if you're not a fan of that, I'm going to give you fair warning now. But when you start hearing about the live action adaptation, I think it's going to pick up some steam. And I wouldn't doubt that we might hear a return to the comics after that. That's just me speculating. I do not know anything involving that. I'm just going to speculate a little bit because they have a lot of stuff lined up. Last I heard, everything was still a go. So if that's still the case, you definitely want to keep an eye out for that. House of Slaughter, number 13, Tate Brombell, Antonio Fuso. Definitely diving into the Something is Killing the Children spinoff. The story of Jace Boucher is really picking up some steam. It's getting that slow burn treatment
right.
that this franchise does better than anybody. I'm sorry. Like, Something That's Killing the Children, I think, sets the bar for it. This is like the 1B for it. It's a story that is picking up a lot of momentum, and it will really have some fans talking after this issue. Guarantee you that. So you definitely want to keep your eyes out for that. I can always talk about Something That's Killing the Children. I really love that series, and like I said, House of Slaughter is not disappointed. It's an anthology book too, so the arcs are self-contained. So you don't need to read one and then the other to keep the story going. Last on my list this week is Black Cloak #3. Kelly Thompson, Meredith McLaren, really diving into the fantasy murder mystery going on there. This book has been so solid, and I can't recommend it enough. If you're into something that's a little different, a little not your average murder mystery, this is your book.
Okay.
And a lot of moving parts going on with this. The artwork, Pat, I think you might dig this a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I really enjoy the art style of this. So, and it really complements the story going on. A little more emotional stuff is getting revealed here involving the officers investigating, but it's one you definitely want to go check out. And like we always say, make sure you're going out supporting your local comic shops. A lot of stuff is out this week, so you definitely don't want to pass that up, and make sure you're supporting your favorite independent comic podcast. We do put in a lot of work, so we definitely want to give you those recommendations and then talk about them after, so make sure we do that. Let's keep it very short and sweet for anything and everything that is the ODPH. ODPHpodcast.com. That's it for this week. So for the one and only Padawan J.
Thank you.
I'm your host, Kenan. Thank you as always for listening to the ODPH podcast, better known as the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. See you next time.